Good evening, everybody. I'll probably not keep the. I did a bunch of introductions about, Industries of Titan, why I like it, a bunch of other little ideas. I don't think I'm going to go into. I'm not going to repeat all of it. I probably won't even put the old video up, but I am going nuts with the encoding problems that I've been having for the different programs. This will include OBS, so I am running into some problems with OBS right now. It's telling me that my encoding is overloaded, and this seems to have been sort of a constant feature ever since I've upgraded my processor. I have no idea how to fix it, but at the very least here I can see the overall volume levels. My view here is that Industries of Titan is too quiet, but I'm going to do my best to work with what I've got here. Just a reminder, again, I said this earlier on in the broadcast, but I was given a copy of Industries of Titan for promotional purposes. So for those of you who are making buying decisions of the game, first of all, I congratulate you on your excellent taste for the game, for games. But second of all, please keep in mind that I was given something of value to cover the game, although I'm a huge fan of it. Okay, so we've got our survey out of the way. I talked a little bit about how I like putting extract ruins and salvage ruins above survey, and that's just because surveying is sort of a default behavior that I've kind of got in the background for people. And I've invested quite a bit in reducing the costs for certain, like taking things like isotope and mineral patches. So I'm going to take advantage of that and start mining those right away. I have a slight preference for, well, actually the preference isn't as strong for this area after all, because there's, presumably if we upgrade the headquarters, we can get an even better location for fuel turbine. So we'll go to the place with the most minerals. So 54 looks like our best. Yeah, so there's more than one with 54, but let's just take care of that one. And then we'll be able to, pick whichever ruins we want after the fact. So the first thing that we really want to be doing is I want to try and get a decent foundation of isotopes to be able to build out my my factories. In fact, one thing that I think I'm going to do in the employee management is put moving isotopes above moving minerals. Now, one other thing that I'm going to do is get some research. Oh, no, sorry, I don't have the artifacts, but we can do resource patch harvesting rate, HQ range. Okay, so I think HQ range and resource patch harvesting rate are the two priorities right now. Get the artifacts as early as I can. How you doing, Starbright Knight? Good to see you. Ooh. Absorbs pollution. Maybe we'll hold off on getting rid of that. Could be better, but not too bad. Starbright Knight, thank you for asking. All right. So let's start with the resource patch harvesting rate. We've got one red artifact left, so I don't think we're going to be able to get migrants right away. But right now, my goal here is to get the isotopes anyway. Yeah, there's a lot of minerals that are already going into the stocks, which makes me a bit worried. Olaf, how you doing? It's good to see so many familiar faces. Yeah, so this is kind of interesting to see people standing around. This is almost certainly because I don't have enough storage space. So, I'll start by building a bigger storage container. Okay, can I get a second person verifying whether or not the music is too loud? I'm sorry to do it this way, but I know, like, I've spent a lot of time debugging the stream. I'm back on OBS, and I can't rely on just one person anymore, because I've noticed that it is swinging the stream one way or the other. So could somebody just say, just let me know if the music is too hot? Okay. Admittedly, while I say that, it's, I did just get to a quiet bit. Maybe if I unpause the game, it will go a little bit louder. So is that still a problem, or is this, or was it just like a temporary problem? Okay, let's think about, so I've got some more credits. Now the thing is, if I don't use these credits, it's just going to wind up, in my employees' pockets. And heaven forbid we let that happen. Music is a bit loud? Okay. And thank you, Johnny. So the other thing, I mean, if people know, this is one of the big problems about stream stuff. Only when it's really going? Okay. I did not seem to have a problem with OBS under the old setup. Now that I have a better setup, what's happening is, I'll just state this plainly. I think this is the sort of thing where people just like to go on Google and pretend like they're an expert, and then it turns out that, like, it's not the problem because I'm as good as Googling as everyone else. But on the odd chance that somebody has run into this before, what's happening to me right now is that even though I'm on a better processor and I have the same video card from before, what I notice is happening is that every once in a while in the bottom line of OBS Studio, it will say that the encoder is overwhelmed. Now, that doesn't always happen, but regardless as to whether or not it's giving that message, I notice that every couple of seconds the frame rate drops from like 60 to about 52. Now, I can close all the other programs on the computer. I can run, even like a text-based game. It seems to be only when I'm doing a live broadcast to Twitch that this sudden drop happens. So it's hard to say that this is specifically an OBS problem. It's definitely not a bandwidth problem, because even when I go down to 3000, the problem still persists. I've also tried changing the frame rate down to 30. And the problem here is that the usual stuff that people say is, so this is the funny thing. This is actually happening when I switch to NVENC. So even if I go to software or the, whatever they call the Intel one, this is actually specifically when I'm using the GPU. So it makes me wonder if there's some sort of a driver thing or some other thing that's going on. But in this case here, it's been a persistent problem for the last little while. And unfortunately, usually what people will say is to disable, what is it, HAGs, hardware accelerated something or other. Like it's in, it's already a, anyway, sorry, it's something that Microsoft's put in, apparently gives you some marginal gains as far as hardware is concerned or something like that. But yeah, it's just one of these things where I really, like, I would say probably the last 2 or 3 weeks, all of my free time has essentially been spent on trying to get the stream back to how it was before I did the upgrade. And it just doesn't seem to be working. So if somebody knows what the answer to this is, great. But I've kind of given up hope that this will actually have a solution because, it's, there's a lot of opinions running around and, it's like, oh yeah, just turn off hardware accelerated, whatever. I'm like, okay, did that, still the same problem. And then it's like, once you go past that Googleable result, there's not really anything that people want to or can talk about. And then at that point, it's like, okay, well, what's, like, I don't know. I think maybe it's just the idea of this illusion of expertise, and then people just kind of leave you out to dry when it doesn't go through. That's the thing that always... I think that's probably the one that becomes a bit off-putting on it. But again, I don't want people to be scared off of... Like, if you happen to know a solution or what might be causing this, I am looking for a solution on it. I've just kind of given up hope that I'm going to get a real answer at some point. Okay, let's... I may actually have to wait a while before I can get a real power system in, but we can at least build the basics. This is a little bit of a clown show as far as all of the details are working, but... we do also need to put down an energy so the big one is 3 across. I feel like I always get this wrong. Yeah, it should be the other way around. And apparently I forgot to... Oh no, they already researched it. So we'll work on the HQ range. Now I still need the artifacts to unlock the spaceport, and then I would at some point like to get Council Communications down, but let's get some resources while we can. Yes, so it's part city builder, it's part simulate. I mean, city builders are simulations, but I'd say probably a little bit more sort of the Factorio style sim that I think people have been getting into. There's a Tetris element to it, but there's also a strategy element to it as well, which will be apparent in just a little while. The first thing I want to be doing now is getting a... I want to try and get a little bit of an isotope refining operation down so that I can... In fact, let's change the priorities now. So what I want to work on right now is just getting the ability to create tier 2 isotopes as quickly as I can. And then we'll use that as sort of the framework for the rest of my operations. So one of the things that I'm worried about here is the speed at which the threat level's going up. In fact, I should probably figure out what I'm doing with my money for the rest of the evening. So let's get the defense turret up. We already picked our energy plant and fuel turbine. Now I'm a little tempted... We don't have immediate access to resource nodes, so let's say we'll go for the transport hub and the storage facility for the last little bit of money. And right now I'm just going to worry about taking down the ruins that provide resources. One of the big reasons for doing that is it's nice to kind of starve myself of artifacts at the start, just so that I can, I can take advantage of them when I'm in a better position to do so. Although again, we're waiting for the 5, so if I do happen to get an opportunity to grab 3 more, I'll probably work on that. Now, one question I will have is whether or not I've got enough space to be able to get 10 mineral... Yes, I do. So put that down. Of course, we're going to be replacing all of this with the tier 2s when the time comes. But that's a problem for tomorrow. Okay, so we'll put the waste receptacle. We need to make sure that we can still store our waste. And then we put down the relay to get everything up and running. Okay, everything's up and running now. I'm going to mark this storage container to only accept isotopes, and this is just so that we can get a few tier 2 isotopes. So one thing that still seems to be a little bit of a point of confusion for people who play Industries of Titan is this idea of refining. So let's just take an example here. You know, you'll take a look. It's like, okay, I want to build, you know, a nice big energy plant, right? I love the idea of generating 48 energy. What's it going to take to do that? Oh my god, 200 minerals. Do you mean to tell me that I need to, like, you know, find 20 of these ruins? No. And in fact, one of the things that I've noticed sometimes when buildings are taking a really long time to build, for me, it's because I've accidentally said to build it using tier 1 minerals. What you can do in this game is you can build refining facilities. In fact, refining is the one thing that you have to do at the factory level, and there is not an equivalent at the city level to work with. So essentially what you will do is you will get an input, you'll get a processor, and then you need to have an output and an employee module. Now, it's up to you to decide how you put things together. I happen to like this little structure because it lets me build my big long snake of a machine. But the basic idea here is that you can put in a tier 1 resource, in this case an isotope. You refine it to tier 2, and tier 2, as you can see from this list here, right? If you just look at the bottom half of the tooltip, tier 1 isotope is worth 1 construction unit. Tier 2 is worth 3 construction units. Tier 3 is worth 9 construction units. So in the case of isotopes, you basically multiply it by 3 each time. Likewise, in terms of minerals, it's the same story, except that you multiply it by 5. So one of the ways I like to think about the unit, and I will confess, I struggle on levels like this because I have a very slow way of playing. I like to assume that given enough time, my tier 1 resources will turn into tier 3 resources. And so where I can, I prefer to use refined resources, even for little things like these storage containers and all of that. And one of the things that I'm going to wind up doing is I'm actually going to dismantle them and rebuild them using tier 2 and tier 3 minerals when the time comes. But because I need to build factories and because I need to build energy pylons, right now I've built those out of tier 2. So I built those out of tier 1 isotopes. So 2 tier 1 for the energy pylon, 2 tier 1 for the factory. And if I want to build another factory to build my nice long assembly lines, that's actually going to mean a total of 6 isotopes. And again, remembering that I like treating these things as if, given enough time, they'll eventually turn into tier 3. On a long enough run, that's going to mean that that's 54 construction units worth of isotopes that I'm sort of leaving on the table. So in this case here, it's an easy little optimization that I can do. It's probably overkill, but I'm sort of set in my ways on doing it that way now. Nope, I see Johnny has sent a Snapchat message. I figured you'd like that. Anyways, let's carry on. Right now I'm just going to wait for those tier 2 isotopes, and then we will replace the machinery. I also want a quick look at what else I can do. So I'm not that worried about factory pollution at the moment. Employee salary is something I might want to turn down. Movement speed's definitely good for getting things done. So I think probably what I'll do is I'll focus on salary down, revenue up, pollution emissions down, and then maybe pollution resistance. but only after we've unlocked trade with the council. Okay, so let's grab some more raw resources. I do also have the beginnings of a fuel turbine if I want here, but generally what I've done is I've built a better fuel extractor in the headquarters first. It was really interesting to see the introduction of pollution from factories. Oh, you can see an isotope mine, or well, deposit, which we can turn into a mine later. So one of the interesting things that's changed the way that I play with the introduction of pollution for factories is that my tendency now is to, so I used to build these big work from home setups where I'd put a bunch of employees all in a factory. But of course, now that all the employees are living in a location that effectively poisons them, that's going to mean that I have a very high mortality rate among the people who I sort of want to turn into, productive people, sources of revenue, basically. You take your citizens and you basically put them in front of sort of high click rate advertising to earn your credits. So if I keep them all in factories, it means that over a certain period of time, they're just going to get sick and die. That's going to inevitably be... I've got a lot of surveys, Johnny. But yeah, so my tendency to build and rely on those over time has actually fallen because of the sort of the introduction of the factory pollution. In fact, overall, I would prefer to avoid factories except for refining at this point. I suspect that's probably what the intended effect is. I think they maybe were noticing that people were relying a little bit too much for factories for things that should have been used for other things. Okay, so I'm a little curious why we aren't doing anything with the tier... it's because it doesn't have power. Okay, that's my bad. I should have been paying attention to that. This is because I didn't build enough generators. Fortunately, we have lots of resources to play around with. I am eventually going to put down a waste receptacle, but I want to wait until I get the most use out of it. And let's see, we've got one more fuel being used. We currently don't have any storage, so I'll just stick another one down for now. So I'm a bit behind things now that it's taken me the... So you want to let the cows graze in the field, not be stuck. I'm not 100% sure what you mean by that. Starbright Night. But in any case, yeah, so I'm a bit behind where I would normally want to be, but we've got our... So here's an example of the sort of thing that I could do right now. I could dismantle the energy pylon, and I could put a one built with a tier 2 resource in its place. Now, if I do that, that's going to turn off it's going to sever the power connection to the factory. So I actually want to have a second one so I can dismantle the factory and put another one down. Actually, probably I want a third, so that way I can dismantle the factory, build 2, and the upgrade. So yeah, we'll wait. We'll get the energy pylon. We'll build the 2 factories. So that's 3 tier 2 isotopes in total. And then I also want to combine them, which is a 4th. So right now I've got a lot of workers that are sort of standing around not doing a whole lot, but that will change as soon as I get the assembly lines up and running. Like I said, I am quite slow at starting, which is where these more aggressive rebel starts can be a bit of a challenge for me. Okay, we've got the 12, so We're gonna... Actually, I'm basically just gonna dismantle everything, which is probably overkill. Actually, I can't quite dismantle everything. If I dismantle everything, then I'm going to lose my storage, and that's a problem. But I can at least get the basics down. And I can build a replacement. I can, however, dismantle these bits. Yeah, so I gotta wait until... Okay, so yeah, a couple bits of mistaken planning. So number one, if I'm gonna dismantle this, I want to make sure that I've actually finished the production. So we need power for that. Second of all, I do need to make sure that I don't dismantle the storage for the other... Johnny should know he's a real chef, although that's not how he makes his money anymore. He makes his money by international intrigue. Alright, I think it's fair to say I don't have storage. Yeah, I also don't have storage for the tier 1s, so I've really gone and done it. I have no idea how the game's going to treat this, but I'm going to build two small containers. I'm just going to dedicate one to isotopes and one to minerals.
Founder, hope things are going okay? Great. Listen, I've been talking to some of the other advisors. I'll be honest, I was expecting to learn a lot from them, but I think I'm learning more about how not to work. Like, Alexa is a really competent person, but she's just too relaxed. How could you be so confident? If I were her, I'd be more intense about this job. And Leo gets the job done, but he's always getting in huge fights with the managers in his department. And Vern. I don't know, Founder. Vern doesn't seem like he actually does anything. He's always leaving the office and coming back smelling weird. Like ozone. Ugh. It seems weird that the head of waste management is personally burning waste for fun. So, yeah, I used to think I was a bit of a raw recruit, but now I'm thinking that I'm actually kind of better than these guys. I mean, I am a good worker. I'm a great worker, actually. I've done a lot of important stuff for the city so far. You and I should talk about my career plans sometime, Founder. I feel like getting me a promotion could help both of us.
So I'm dismantling all of this just because sometimes there's a bit of weirdness that well, actually, sorry, there's two reasons I'm dismantling it. Number one, sometimes there's a bit of weirdness when you combine the two buildings. However, another important feature is that I want to get the two isotopes back from the factory. Like I said, this is a very time-consuming way to do this, but we're also not generating a whole lot, so, you know, Rebel threat level of 40 is not great, but it's not the sort of thing, it's not like a hair on fire kind of emergency yet. So as long as I'm sort of aware of the threat and I have a plan for getting past it, we should still be okay. Okay, so looks like we are done all the work, so we're going to dismantle all the remaining buildings. Now I do want to make sure that I've got a tier 2 isotope tucked away in one of these things. I do not! So the whole point of doing this is kind of gone. At this point, actually, I'll just turn off the fuel fabricator. So the reason I'm turning off the fuel fabricator is just so that I can let the Zethane sort of re-emerge. Okay, so this has got to be for tier 2 isotopes. Because if it isn't, then I've kind of blown it. Okay, why am I not allowed to dismantle you? They just filled this with minerals, despite the fact that I told them not to. All right. This is ridiculous. Like, I kind of know why this is happening, but I do wonder how I can get how I can get them to behave the proper way. So again, there's going to be a bunch of people who throw a bunch of assets into this, but hopefully, yeah, they're occupying. Okay, well, you know what? Let's just go for the ridiculous numbers. And what I'll do is I'll put move isotopes at the higher end. So the important part here is that I need one of those tier 2 isotopes for, there we go. Okay. So this is going to set in motion a bunch of other stuff, which will be helpful. I am eventually going to have to move this large storage container, but that's a different issue. The other thing that I need to do is get the waste taken care of, so this is one of the reasons why I wanted to clear all this nonsense out. Before I do that, though, we've got... Yes, we do have space for one more of these. I'm going to regret putting these down, but... I got a lot of crap here. So the logic behind this is we're building the... Oh, we don't have space for the rest of the stuff. So this is definitely not how I want to do this in future. I've made some questionable choices. But we'll combine the factory. We've got the energy pylon ready to go in a little bit. I'll be able to turn the fuel fabricator back on. And we don't actually have the energy. We don't have what it takes to sustain sort of the full production lines. But as long as we've got sort of enough to build the basics, we should be fine. So the first thing I'm going to do is focus on improving my... I want to focus on improving my... my minerals. This will allow me to build better factory lines, basically. And then we can build better... power generators and fuel fabricators and such, and we can basically dismantle the headquarters and rebuild it in the way I actually want it to look. But for now, we're just going to get some basics done. We're also starting to earn some more council, or earn some more influence. So if there's any more tiles... Okay, doesn't look like there's anything that gives us resources. Now, it's tempting to actually go for these obsidian ruins because they give me... they actually give me high-quality minerals that I can build some valuable stuff with first. So let's claim that first. We'll move isotopes down the list again. And at some point, I'm probably going to get people working on the patches again, but because the main source of Zethane is going to be coming sort of from this little corner here, it's not as big of a priority as it normally would have been. Okay. So normally what I would be doing right now is putting down... well, actually, it's not that big of a deal if I do it this way. Let me just think. Let's see if waiting for the obsidian ruins makes sense. I'm curious how they're going to handle the extraction. So presumably they're just going to walk away with the tier 2s and stick those into the headquarters right away. Which, if that's the case, then that's good for us because that means that we have a bunch of resources for our factory. Yep, that's exactly what happened. Okay. So we put down the employee module, output, waste. Okay, so I don't have much choice here. I do still need to, unless the obsidian gives me tier 3, I do still need to put something that I'm going to dismantle down. But this at least is going to give me the ability to refine more tier 2s, and then we can start working on tier 3. We're actually really darn close to what we need. So now we're ready to turn the fuel fabricator back on. I have the power. Okay, so this one's asking for too much. So we've got a surplus of 3. That should be... I think I'm going to be 1 short to go from tier 2 to tier 3 at this point. Ah, no, that's a shame. Looks like the tier 2 just got nabbed. Is that? Okay, that's fine. That'll just wind up in the processor. We'll add an employee. We are unfortunately waiting for the tier 2 to be properly processed, so there's going to be a little bit of a wait involved. So there's 2 things that I want tier 2. There's two things that I want tier 2 minerals for. One is the output module. That's pretty important because we... Oops. That's going to be a problem, isn't it? Now the drawback here is we also need the relay because right now this doesn't have power. So again, we wait for a tier 2. Now, as far as an overall strategy goes, I'm not quite sure. We're at rebel threat of 50%, and we're only just getting our tier 3 line up and running. So there may be better approaches for the future. But right now, I'm going to build the last of the production line. I'm also going to build something to catch the garbage. With a tier 3 up, I should actually be able to replace the tier 1 to tier 2 processor. Okay, there's the waste module. Oh my god, not that. Okay, using tier 3s, we put down the level 1 processor. Level 2 requires 50, so we need a second of these tier 2s, which we can now afford to put down, I think. I'll put down another waste module in preparation. And then eventually we'll add another employee module. Actually, why do we have surplus power? Because we haven't got the processor on. Okay, so we're at the limit of our power generating ability right now. Alright, thank you, Starbright Knight. Have a good one. Okay, sorry, I got a little focused on what was going on there. Let's clear out the second obsidian ruins for its goodies. And then I think we're out of locations that give me raw material. Oh no, that's not true. We've got another obsidian ruins. That would have given me the tier 3s actually. So maybe I want to hang on to that. In any case, I do have one more replacement I can make, which is the level 2 processor here. So once this thing's done processing, we can dismantle it and replace it, and that way we maximized our our mineral use. Although it is fair to say with 81 tier 1s, it's not like we're running short on minerals. I generally tend to over... I am very angry that I didn't turn this off for myself. I tend to overdo it on the mineral side, to be completely honest. Okay, let's dismantle this one. Put down the tier 3, so all of those tier 2s now get turned into something that goes inside the storage container, and we're off to the races. Now, the thing that I want to be focusing on is improving... So, first thing I'm going to do is just gut this whole setup. This is going to mean that I need to find some new locations to store everything. But at this point, I think I'm gonna start from the basics. Yeah, that's going to be a lot of mess to clean up. Oh, actually, yeah, these two I'm going to keep. Everything else gets thrown out. Okay, so one of these. Now we should still be producing... Oh no, we're not, because we don't have the power for it. But that's fine, because we will just grab the obsidian ruins when the time comes. Okay, so I do need to leave some space for... I also tend to put generators down, so I need to leave a bit of space for the fuel. This is a good start for now. I'll put down an employee module in anticipation of being able to satisfy that. So one of the things I'm doing right now is just trying to occupy the time until I can get these obsidian ruins. Again, waiting for things is not a very good idea, and it does reflect a bit of inefficiency in terms of how I'm playing this. But I've sort of committed to this very silly way of doing things. I think I'm also going to put down waste receptacles. I do normally get rid of these in the future, but right now I do actually need to get... I do need to get a few items in place before. So essentially, one of the top priorities right now is to get a... actually, you know what? I can just dismantle it and rebuild it. So I am going to get one of these down. And I'll also build a large storage container, although that will be replaced with tier 3 as well. I figure I can break down and rebuild over time. But just sitting and having the production line wait for an ideal circumstances probably doesn't make a lot of sense. So essentially, everybody's going to clear out all the extra stuff to build the power plant or a power generator and the fuel fabricator, and then we're back up and running basically. Okay, so what we do here is we take a look at the factory. So now we're short 1 power, right, because of this thing. But it does mean that we're now generating tier 3 resources. So I'm going to be able to replace a few of those items with. I'll wait till we've got a few in the in storage, but basically we'll be able to build a few items using tier 3s, which will give us some leftover tier 2s. So what I specifically mean by that is we can replace this storage container. This is probably going to have all sorts of consequences. The fuel fabricator, which is currently made with tier 2 minerals. Now that's going to turn off the power, but that's fine. That was expected. And I can at least start by building a battery. So this will be the last time that we sort of shut everything down to build an efficiency. But now we've got a large fuel, large storage, and we do actually put fuel storage here as well. And I've got a lot more tier 2 than I thought I did, so I can actually start putting down the batteries as well. So when the time comes, I'll put down a large fuel storage. So right now we're actually generating a surplus of fuel. That was unexpected. Now, interestingly enough, it's getting cranky at me for not having a place to put tier 1 minerals, but it looks like they were able to sort that out for themselves. So they're learning self-reliance. Okay, so this kind of finally puts to rest the nonsense that I had in my headquarters. This is eventually going to sort itself out with the tier 1 minerals and all of that, but this is all storage stuff anyway. So I would like to get some fuel storage up sooner rather than later, but it's not the sort of thing that's going to stop me from being able to realize the rest of my factory. The next thing I want to do is basically get the same setup down for the factory, and with this, once we get the tier 3s built, I can put down two more power generators. So as you can see here, this whole thing's going to be producing tier 3s at a fairly decent clip. We'll also turn this on, get someone working so we can produce the tier 3s a bit faster. And from that, we're going to have sort of the foundations for our we're going to have the foundations for our this placement doesn't make a ton of sense, but I'm going to go for it as a temporary measure.
Founder, have you heard? Ruin trespass rates are up in some cities nearby. When some people have a hard time making rent, they look to the ruins. It never ends well. Your average civilian has no idea how difficult artifact extraction actually is. They think they can waltz into the nearest dilapidated structure and find an artifact worth billions. Instead, they'll just bump into a load-bearing beam and bring the whole thing down on their heads. Or they'll get arrested. Or they'll get a toxic compound on their skin and break out in hives. It's the foundational myth of Titan. Untrained fools venturing out into the ruins and striking it rich. Well, the original council settlers weren't actually untrained. They were skilled professionals like me. Just thinking about it is disturbing my mindset. Excuse me. I have to go center myself.
So a couple moves that I made here. One is to activate this inert ruin. Now this is because I'm going to start bringing in migrants, and that's going to involve, like, there's going to be the pollution from the factory. So this inert ruin actually winds up being pretty helpful. It absorbs pollution. Now it does also absorb zethane, which is going to be a drawback for the headquarters here. But I think as a whole, I'm willing to take on that burden because. In a little bit, I'm going to expand the factory to make tier 3 isotopes. In fact, we can probably get to work on that now. Yeah, we're generating 17 energy, so we've got more than enough for that. Okay, so we've eaten up all of our tier 2s. I think I'm actually going to turn off the mineral input module for a little bit. In the meantime, we can connect the isotopes. So the other thing that's nice about this kind of construction is it is freeing me up for it's freeing up all of that space that was being taken up by all the tier 1 and whatnot. However, you'll notice we're now up to a pretty high rebel threat level. So this is one of the reasons why I'm focusing on a lot of tier 2 stuff. I want to try and get the isotope line up and running properly. And this is so that I can try and build some defensive buildings before things sort of blow up in my face. So that we are going to be relying on the tier 2 sort of producing what it needs quickly. I think I can actually dismantle this one temporarily. So I want an employee module and an output module here as quickly as I can. Sure that that's for tier 1 isotopes. Let's get the output module down first. So as long as I can get the turret down in time, we'll be safe. I'm a little concerned, but not overly. We've already got the connection for all of the power, so that's not a worry. I am waiting on somebody moving the tier 2 basket. It does say that we're full on tier 2 isotopes, so I do want to make sure that we put a place for... Actually, maybe I'll put it for the tier 3s. I'm not sure. I'll figure it out one way or the other. Oh, I should put tier 2 down first. Now I'm babysitting this because I want to make sure that I don't get a bunch of minerals sort of jumping into that right away, but it is good to know that I've got 24 influence because now I can claim the obsidian ruins for a shot of minerals, which means I get to build sort of the last of this setup. So one here, one here. I'm going to put something for the tier 3s and then a second employee module. So we've already used up all of my waste capacity, which is a bit of a worry. But we are going to be able to produce the sorts of resources that we need for defense. So we'll re-enable the mineral input. Actually, we're going to turn that off temporarily just for one more moment. And that's so I can get the foundations of a work from home setup. So we'll put down a habitat module. Not there though. Couple monetization stations for the occupants. Alright, that pretty much that's pretty much all my tier 2 spoken for. So what we want to do now is make sure we have all the resources we need to be able to defend ourselves. So that means everyone who can work on these production lines has to be working on these production lines. We still have a surplus for energy, which is good. And what we're going to do now, so when it comes to the defense turret, apparently we don't have any tier 3. No, there we go. We're at 300. Ooh, we may be short then on the... Yeah, we need 400, so that means I need sort of a dedicated... I need a dedicated mineral box for tier 3s. I'm going to temporarily store tier 3s in this one. I just need 400, so... So basically, once the rebel threat meter gets to 100, we're going to be attacked. Now, I've got kind of the infrastructure that I need to be able to hold off the attack, but I do need to make sure that I'm actually, like, I do need to make sure that I actually get it built in time. So normally I like to have a shipyard. Shipyard now costs 5,000 credits, so I can't afford to just sort of build one of these. I can't afford to buy one right away. I do need to have people earning money for me. And so usually I tend to find, because I play quite slow, it's better for me to shoot towards a defensive turret by the time they get to 100%. I will confess I probably would prefer to have this a little bit earlier than I have right now, but I don't think we're going to run into any particular trouble. And we do only need one tier 3, so I'm going to take the time to upgrade the headquarters. This is because we don't have the tier 3 minerals. Now, the other thing I want to keep conscious of is that we are completely full up on space for... we're completely full up on space for waste, so I do want to get the smokestack built relatively soon. But one of the things that's nice about this setup, let me just get the defense turret down. So by extending the headquarters like this, what I get is a bit of extra range on the headquarters. So I'm probably going to need both upgrades, but I can at least get one fuel turbine down here for a start. Now, one problem I'm going to run into is I don't have a lot of good places for a power generator, particularly one that's covered by the defense turret. I may actually build the power generator. Actually, that would give me an excuse to mine out this minerals patch. So maybe I build the power generator here, let's say. I just want to have a road that sort of covers this central area. Okay, so let's survey the ruins that have just been exposed. Okay, 87% on the rebel threat. So we definitely want this thing to get built as soon as possible. So the first priority is going to be to build a... actually, you know what? I might be able to save myself some trouble by just putting a storage facility down here. That's a very sneaky way of getting past this problem I have. So that's going to store everything. That's going to be minerals, that's going to be isotopes. This is just going to be temporary storage for everything. Okay, with that in mind, let's go to... Yeah, so I don't need you to be a secret tier 3 mineral repository anymore. So one of the ways that Industries of Titan works is that you do need to have a network for power, but when it comes to fuel, it automatically transports itself. So I can build a fuel turbine here, and then I can build the energy plant here, and this energy plant is still connected to my grid. And again, I'm thinking of the energy grid right now just because it would be nice to have it'd be nice to have something. Yeah, this is draining my battery right now. I'll go for the extra upgrade because I can. It never hurts to have bigger guns when the enemies show up. Okay, so the fuel turbine needs 200 for tier 3 minerals. So in this case, we'll just wait a little bit. It's actually enough tier 2 minerals that I can build a few more of these pods and monetization stations. Okay, 98%, so this is probably the last I can improve the defensive turret before they come to beat me up. And then what else do I want to do? I think at this point we just get the one more artifact. We'll get the last artifact just so that we can activate the council trading. So we got 40 seconds before the defense turret's finished building. That probably means that the rebels will they'll start their attack before it's done. But we should be able to turn it on and and let everything go. It is worth mentioning that because actually we're draining batteries right now just because of my my factory here. Let's take a second. Okay, we can build the extra monetization station. Yeah, that covers all of it. So we can see if we can get the... Okay, we don't have the space for the... Or we don't have the migrant ship yet.
I hope you're ready to fight, Founder, because I certainly am. If you're looking for my weak spots, I think you'll find I have none.
So I am going to do
Never met someone without a weak spot. Let's find theirs, Founder.
So I'm going to wait before I do the call to arms because it's worth remembering this thing takes 36 energy. We've only got a surplus of 7, so we want to make sure that the enemy ship is actually in the area before we try and take them on. Now, there's going to be a few things that I do in the interim. So for instance, we've got enough to be able to build a fuel turbine now. Now I don't have the ability to submerge the city if things go sideways. So what I think I'll do, once I see the numbers moving up, I'll actually pause the job. But I figure it won't hurt to get some kind of fundamentals down, because the next step's going to be to build the energy plant. The urgency for the fuel turbine also comes from the fact that the activated radar, like if you take a look at the zethane concentration, there's almost nothing in this region here. So I do actually want to start coming up with an alternative source of fuel. Okay, looks like they're taking their time coming over. Now it's not bad that we're that the combat's sort of being held off, and the reason for this is when you're in the middle of a heat wave, it is easier for the buildings to catch fire, and I don't have any money to repair them with. So inevitably, I'm going to wind up seeing some losses in terms of the. Oh, okay, there they are. I'm going to wind up seeing some losses just in terms of the repairs that I need to do. But right now, the hope is that I have enough to be able to sort of bat back the enemy without a fire starting, and that way we won't need to ask for money from the council. If I have to, I will, but again, it kind of depends how long this battle goes. Actually, at that rate, this thing's going to catch fire, almost certainly. So I'll maybe make sure that we get an energy plant up and running soon. We can now do this fuel turbine because the common salvation's otherwise occupied. if I can, I want to open this thing up and start accepting migrants. Once we hit 200, I can build the energy plant here. Okay, so the turret's on fire. That means that I need to trade out for some credits. And now we can get somebody repairing that. If we don't repair it, I am in deep trouble. In the meantime, we'll start the... I don't have the influence for the... So you can see the... fire extinguisher going. We don't have a ton of cash though, so this is going to be a little bit of a race. Okay, so the fuel turbine should be up and running soon, or now. So now we'll build the energy plant in range, and that will hopefully make our energy problems go away. In fact, I can turn off the tier 3 side of things so I can start building the halves. So as you can see, our credits are down to 2, so there's no more repairs happening on the defense turret, but as long as there aren't any fires, I don't need to worry about that. He says as the fires start.
Tisk, tisk. You've put up a good fight, and it only makes me more determined to stop you.
Good work crushing Bahar, Founder. I would almost pity them if they weren't so hell-bent on destruction of Council property.
Okay, so let's get that factory up and running. So we are technically draining batteries, but we should get an energy plant up and running pretty soon. And at this point, I'm just going to add more relays. Now at some point I do want to build... I've been building a storage facility which is slowly building up waste. Eventually I am going to build a smokestack to start burning the waste, but that's not at the top of my list right now just because I actually need to earn some money at this point. So we're going to accomplish that by... bringing in migrants and basically building a place for them to live. Although it happens the other way around. You build the place for them to live. One thing that's nice about the bonus that I chose is that you do, as long as you're able to take the extra waste that comes, you actually get influence for bringing in migrants with this bonus, where normally you have to pay for them. I'm fond of mentioning this. Industries of Titan has got some really neat writing in it. So the idea of influence in this, it's an actual currency. So in this case, where we normally associate influence with sort of lobbying activity or the sorts of things that you do, like it's okay. I think the thing that appeals to me about this is that it has a reasonably interesting idea about money. It's like, obviously, you know, I think most people understand we don't have commodity money. It's, you know, it's something that we basically kind of make some assumptions about the ability to turn that money into goods and services in the future. You know, I'm not going to give you the whole lecture because, I mean, the problem with this is every once in a while you run into someone who's really tedious and they're like, oh, you know, like money's just an invented construct, man. Like I had somebody at a bookstore do this to me once, and I'm like, yeah, no, I know. It's why I'm buying this book on monetary policy.
Founder, have you considered that your waste management officer is a bit of a loose cannon? He was in my office last week saying we should start filling ruins with waste. That's not workable. You cannot suspend millions of liters of toxic sludge 50 stories above the surface of the moon. These ruins will buckle under the weight and then it will start raining sludge. Vern has some, well, he has some ideas, that's for sure. Ideas. That's all I'll say. They are certainly thoughts that come out of his head. You know, he's worked for quite a lot of these startup cities in the past. All of them have failed. Think about it, Founder. Good business leaders surround themselves with successful people.
I forgot the, well, they are thoughts that have come out of his headline. That is a new favorite. Okay, what was I talking about before? Right, money. So, you know, again, I'm not going to go down that line. Just the idea here is that the money is not necessarily tied to any particular thing. It's more it serves as this substitute for us doing a whole bunch of other exchanges. So, for instance, if I go to the barbers, they probably don't need any economic analysis. Usually somebody who requires a specialist does that. So instead of doing all of the trades to make that happen, you know, we just sort of accept, okay, yeah, you know, I take the money, or, you know, you do this thing for me, I give you money, and then you can go and decide whatever the heck you want to do with it. But what's I think the thing that's an interesting idea here, right? Like, again, there's all sorts of different ways that you can sort of figure out, you know, you can maybe say minimum wage, and you can work out, you know, how many hours do you need to work in order to accomplish a certain thing. And that would be a way that you could come up with a measurement. And so this is one of the ways where you can sometimes come up with an estimate in terms of what the improvement for well-being is, right? So if you think of this idea, I think there's a paper that's used the idea of what it would take to obtain an hour of light, right? So if you're in the Middle Ages, you need a candle. What does a candle cost you? Well, again, they don't necessarily have some kind of a financial system like we have today, but they roughly work out, you know, how much time you would need to work to be able to get a candle. Whereas now it's, you know, it's almost like a reflex for us, right? We just flip on a light switch and it's like we get mad if it doesn't work. We're so accustomed to that. And so it's just one of these, I happen to like examples like that because they do a really good job of sort of pulling me out of assumptions in terms of what the world has always been like. Like, intuitively, I sort of understand the idea that, you know, light switches have not been around forever. But the idea of the wide availability of light, like the fact that I do a lot of writing in the evening, even if I'm handwriting in a journal, the fact that that is enabled at all already makes a certain, you know, either I would have to give up a lot of my day to be able to afford to buy enough candles, or I would have to sort of work around how I currently live my life. You know, neither of one of these things I would necessarily consider an improvement in terms of my material circumstances. So what does any of this have to do with influence? Well, again, the idea here is that, in fact, we can take this in the Codex. Influence, a tight and unique currency used by the Council for trade deals. While influence is a much more stable medium of exchange, the Council have been known to alter the value, though they rarely give their reasons for doing so. It is useful to stockpile nonetheless, and some asteroid belt mining companies even offer salaries in influence. So again, what is influence? Well, in this case, it is the ability to make demands on the Council, the people who are running the show on Titan, right? If I want this empty plot, I need to pay influence. And you can see, you know, today, right? if you want to do some sort of real estate development, if you want to try and get something done, there are people that you need to talk to and to be able, like, you go through this whole song and dance of being able to achieve certain things. And so instead of it being this maybe strange system where maybe you're not 100% sure what you need to do, or, you know, or maybe you're just one of the insiders and that's how you're able to wield influence. In the case of Titan, what they've done is they've actually made influence, the ability to make demands of the council, a tradable thing, the same way that we would have currency. And of course, the value would collapse if Titan ceased to be the sort of place where you wanted to make your fortune, or if the council was, you know, wasn't able to deliver on the things that you wanted. But in this case here, like, I can tell you that the exchange rate, so if I want to get 250 credits from the council, that's going to cost me 10 influence. And then in principle, if you were a particularly nerdy fan of Industries of Titan, you'd be able to sort of run through the reasoning and be able to try and come up with other, you know, for the things that you don't have. So, like, how many factories is 250 credits worth? Well, you could actually take a minute and see, well, here's what it would cost me to build a factory on my own. Here's what it costs me to, in terms of influence, and you can actually maybe work out whether or not this is a good deal for you. There's definitely ones which I don't think are good deals from the council, and I think there's actually a little something to the story about the exchange rates, or the fact that some things are exchanged and others aren't, but that's maybe a conversation for another time. I do want to help with the citizen pollution resistance. I don't really need the livability from the HQ, although maybe the HQ, yeah, sorry, I could be wrong on that. It could just be that the being next to the HQ is good. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. You know what? We'll lock that in too. Let's get the rest of the work from home setup built. I feel like I've been dragging my feet on this. As you can see, our waste is slowly ticking up. So I do need to think a little bit about where I want to put my waste. If we go to pollution, it'll actually show you the direction of the wind. So the one thing I don't want to do is put a smokestack like right here, because that's just going to generate a bunch of pollution that's going to waft over the factory where the, you know, where all the residents currently are. So because the wind's blowing this way, and especially because, oh, sorry, that's not a mine. My bad. The mine was here. So, I mean, as far as places to build residential areas go, it's probably going to have to be up here. But I'm thinking maybe we put the smokestack beside the spaceport. If I can get one more upgrade... Oh, I definitely can on the headquarters. In fact, we could probably do that on the defense. Nope, that's cost 144. So I prefer upgrading the headquarters first anyway. But yeah, what I can do... Actually, I can already build a... I can already build a... can already build the smokestack because I'm going to get the 2 slots here. Okay, so... But I do still want to keep the tier 2s. Okay, so I need to finish the internals of this first. So I need 5, 10, 15 more tier 2s. We're probably going to hold off on production until the pylon gets built. Then we can turn on the tier 3 we can turn on the tier 3 production, and then we can build the smokestack. We can upgrade or expand the energy plants and the fuel turbine, and then we can start thinking about the next few goals that I want to achieve. Okay, emissions are down. I'll do pollution resistance as well. It's not actually as big of a deal because I do get the bonus for bringing new people in, but I don't know. I'll try to be nice. So we're actually earning more than we are spending, which is good. I'll wait till we get that last tier 2, and then I will upgrade the energy pylon one more time. So I have enough to upgrade the defense turret, but I do want to get this pylon up just so I have an idea of what I'm going to need to work with the smokestack. That was the wrong building. Okay, we're good to go there. We'll go back to the factory. We will turn on the mineral input module. Yeah, this is a bit of a disaster right now, so I would not be surprised if after a little while none of this stuff is going to process just because we've got too much garbage. So, let's start by... I actually want to get some more isotopes off the isotopes patches. And then for the smokestack, I just need one more tier 3, so that won't be as hard to deal with. Oh. I do, however, want to check out the... Okay, there we go. This is the last little batch of surveys that I need to do. The focus is definitely going to be on getting more tier 1 isotopes, because as you can see, we're actually out. And it's important for me to get this last batch of surveys simply because if I don't have any more ruins with isotopes in them, so this is one which I would want to take for the artifacts rather than the isotopes. Essentially, the amounts that are here, right? So the 21, the 15, and the originally 20. So essentially, we're looking at about 36 isotopes. Then, okay, so 39. Yeah, so unless I wind up giving up some artifacts or alternatively inert ruins. So this one absorbs pollution, but this is also close to a place where I might want to build residential areas. We've got 39 isotopes, which can eventually turn into tier 3s. So, it's worth remembering we're going to put down a smokestack here where I can, but we are going to need power for it, so we'll start by putting down an energy pylon. I think I'll put the energy pylon down here, and one thing that's nice about it is you don't need to overlap, you actually just need to touch. So in this case I can put down the 2 smokestacks here, and then we can get a road that travels to it. The road's going to be something we deal with later. But at least now we can start carrying waste over to the smokestack. The next question is going to be, I probably don't want to double up the smokestack. Probably, well then again, with the energy and the fuel, I don't exactly need to double up the power or the fuel turbine either. So maybe I want to focus on, maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea for me to get a road network down actually. I think the way I'll handle that, we'll probably want to clear out these ruins, and then I can build the... Just trying to think of the best place to put the transport. Because the problem about putting it here is that it winds up being a little too close to the current... you know what? This isn't going to be here forever. Well, it's not going to be here forever, so that's just... Okay, maybe we'll put it here. So we need 200 minerals for that, so we're going to have to wait a bit. I think I'll just... I'll buy out the rest of the isotope patches. Actually, that's not true. I'll take this one first. I'll clear out basically a little loop around my main buildings. I am a bonehead, so I have to double up the smokestack. Okay, transport hub is next on the list, so we're probably just going to sit and wait for a bit on that. So we'll connect that. So we need 200 for the... we did the movement, right? Alright, we've lost our first citizen. Again, this is because the factory is full of pollution. So we are this does absorb pollution. This is helping, but it's not enough to bring the problem to a halt. Okay, so we're up to 200 for the minerals now, so we can start getting our transport hub. I can double this up, but I'm not going to do it right away. Number one, because I'm probably going to be a bit short on energy. And then number two, I want to put the minerals towards transporting all of my goods. So priority number one is going to be to get a roadway sort of like this. And then I'll finish the rest of the circuit when I can. But right now I want to make sure that the factory and the storage facility and all of that are taken care of. In fact, another thing I'm going to do with HQ, I'm going to dismantle the waste receptacles as I can. Because there's no direct road link. And so I can put either, I guess not a battery, but I can put fuel storage there. Okay, we definitely want somebody working here. And I can't build road until the transport hub is up. So we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That's going to be quite a bit of, quite a bit in terms of minerals, but... And I think what I will do in prep is we will make sure that we have someone dedicated to cleaning up waste and supplying the smokestack. Obviously, that's going to be made more efficient with the road network. But for now, I'll settle with people just doing it by hand. Because what you'll notice is that the local storage is always going to go down to 0 because they just burn it too fast. It's going to be a little bit of a slog to get the road network down, but that's fine. In fact, maybe what I'll do is I'll start with the factory, and then we'll connect to the smokestack, and then we'll slowly get to the storage. I should also take a look at what's available on the spaceport migrations while we're waiting for these details. So yeah, this is connected to the factory now, so I think it's probably better that we get at least something on the way to the smokestack. I'm wondering if they ever thought about something like the smoke being near the smokestack provoking a fire. Okay, we've got a few citizens dying again because of pollution, but the eventual plan will be to get enough power and get enough power and resources to be able to create sort of a dedicated residential area up here. we're not quite there. And one of the things I want to work on is getting the 5,000 for a shipyard first. So we're gonna wait a little while before the people who sort of die of respiratory disease. We're gonna be having a few of those messages come up. Okay, so now we've got a road network, or we will have a road network to the smokestack. That'll hopefully mean that this is kept full for a little bit longer. I do want to connect this to the storage facility just because right now it's full of waste. So you can see the truck already doing its thing. Okay. So I guess the question now is, what do I want to spend my resources on? Wouldn't entirely hurt to just finish the circuit. Alright, I feel a little bad doing this, but... minerals are relatively cheap here. Now, if I want, I can start getting some more employees as well. I'm going to wait a little while on that. Again, it's mostly an energy question here because we are going to have to deal with another rebel threat before too long. It should only just be one ship, but I don't want to just leave that to chance. I do actually want to properly address the threat and make sure that I've got all the buildings that I need put down. So again, I don't mind putting down a road network because that will hopefully mean that I can clean things up a little bit faster. In fact, I may buy some extra trucks just for efficient... Well, they're not really being used right now, so maybe I'll hold off. I'll split the difference, so I'll buy the 2 trucks that I have right now, and once I start seeing this thing empty, we'll work it out. So I'm a little surprised when you see 24 waste here, right? You'd sort of expect to see a bunch of workers moving that to the smokestack as soon as possible. That doesn't quite seem to be happening here, but we'll take a look and see the developments. So right now the trucks are just kind of sitting in the parking lot. Fair enough. We will work the last isotopes patch. So essentially any isotopes that I don't... these are the last isotopes that I can get without mining. So eventually my expansion is going to head down to this node. But I have a few other priorities before I work on that. So let's see where we're at. I want to maximize the number of employees or a number of citizens that I have in here to maximize the money that I'm making. Let's reduce the employee salary. Being able to upgrade the defense turret would be nice. I'm essentially just looking for things that don't cost us credits, and things that don't cost us. Yeah, actually, it's really just the credits right now. Avoiding isotopes would be nice as well, but I think we can afford to upgrade the turret. The turret is something that has a use. I will lay the groundwork for our fuel and energy upgrades. This is going to be a little... it's going going to be a little dicey because I do need to shut the plant off to, first of all, combine it, but also to upgrade it. So I'm going to need to figure out the right time to do that. But it may not be something we can do until the next rebel attack anyway. Yeah, I think for now our next goal is going to be the shipyard, and then after that we could think about what our next big goal is. I'm definitely inclined towards like residential and office buildings, but we'll see. Like it depends on the circumstances when the time comes. Okay, this stores fuel. This will actually achieve one of my goals for me. I think I'll hold off on it for now, though. Yeah, both of these are definitely not bad to have. So my one small disappointment is that even though I put down this road network, it doesn't really feel like people are taking advantage of it to help get rid of the garbage. Under normal circumstances, I would probably want to put down a storage facility to like basically get rid of this one and put something in place for waste here. But I do want to...
Okay, Founder. It's time to talk career plans. I've been pulling more than my weight here for a while. I've built you an extensible, flexible, high-capacity energy system which robustly serves the needs of this proud city. I've also been taking a couple of online training courses for people management and corporate budgeting. I feel like I'm ready to move on to the next stage of my career. I'm thinking direct management of at least 30 engineers. And a much bigger budget. I mean, this city is growing, so we gotta invest in our energy infrastructure. Founder, I did a good job with our first challenge, and I can keep doing a good job. Keep over-delivering, keep exceeding your expectations. And I deserve compensation for that, I think. If we're calling Vern the Waste Management Officer, why can't we call me the... Power Systems Manager? Elite Power Coordinator? The VP of Energy Systems? There's a lot of options. Think about it, Founder. If you can't give me a title change, you can at least give me a lot more authority. I'm ready for it.
Ayana remains my favorite character. Okay. With the influence, I'm just going to keep snagging artifacts where I can. That does advance my rebel threat level, but at this point, I'm kind of just gonna eat it and work towards our next energy plant. Extraction complete. I do wish we were a little bit faster in terms of getting our isotopes, but that's life. And we should just need two more minerals. Again, it would be nice to have an idea in terms of why the smokestack isn't being filled as quickly as it should be. Okay. Salary renegotiations are done, so we will go to extra citizen ad revenue. I did this one last not because I hate money, but because this really tends to work better when you have lots of citizens, and as you notice, we're running short. We're actually less than half capacity. So I just need to wait for the replacements. So I'm going to guess here that we're shut down. Yeah, we're shut down because of waste. Maybe what we do instead, I'm going to edit the priorities, and I'm actually going to move cleanup above processing right now. It's not because I want to rate cleanup above processing, it's because there's so much cleanup to do that it's getting in the way of processing. So let's just get that cleared out, then we can rearrange the priorities. And again, I built you trucks. Use your trucks. This is a little more like it. Basically, if this thing isn't constantly running, I'm going to be sad. And we've got rebels. So it's worth noting, right? I was kind of banking on having the that energy plant up and running. So when the rebels come, we are actually going to be draining down our power reserves, and we've got a better turret than last time, so it's actually going to be draining at an even faster rate. But I don't need to turn it on until the last minute, so we're just going to, you know, keep calm, and when the time comes, we'll get it ready to go. Okay, trade tickets are a good item to have. I don't mind reducing waste generation.
Surrender now, and you'll save us the trouble of my eliminating you.
So I believe the second... Oh, no, it looks like there's more than one. Okay, I thought it might be more than one. I believe on the second attack there's still... Oh, God, okay, there's more than one ship. I'm potentially in trouble. Oof, that's a bad one, too. So the good news is we have money to repair. I should probably start it right now, actually, because it's already on fire. Oh, we didn't bring it up to level 3. Never mind. The fact that this is going to be a bit of an extended fight does make me a bit worried. Yeah, so Light of Rhea is basically going to be able to shoot whatever it wants for the next little while. Okay, so these are lasers. They seem to be a little bit less worrying overall. We are going to lose a bunch of money repairing this stuff, but the fact that they're focusing on the turret and the factory instead of something like the relic, I'm actually okay with. So we're just going to let nature take its course. I'm hoping at some point our factory will be cleaned out, but... Yeah, so it does look like the smokestack is being fed a pretty constant stream of waste at this point, which is good. I'm not crazy about the fact that it's taking so long to deal with all of the waste. But that's for phase 2 apparently. Okay, we are in the middle of a work cycle. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the factory for a bit. That did not do even remote. No, okay. I'm really reluctant to turn off the work cycle, just because, again, this is where the money for the ship comes from. But okay, it's got to go now.
This loss is a lesson, and when I am victorious, I will remember it.
Okay, so we can turn everything back on. One thing I'm going to do is a little bit different from the original plan. I'm actually going to put the storage facility for the smokestack right beside the smokestack. And essentially that's going to mean there's two places where waste can be generated. One from the factory, and then I guess two from the... the two factories are going to be the places where the waste gets generated. There's only going to be one place where it can be stored, which is right next to the smokestack. And hopefully that will mean the people who are dedicated to transporting it will find it a little more straightforward to transport. It is kind of nice that we at least have something in the local storage all the time. That wasn't always true before. But the fact of the matter is I have dedicated workers to this now, and we're still taking a while. So the next thing I'm going to do is build some conversion capsules. That's going to require a little work from me. Now these are going to be temporary, so I don't mind spend. Actually, you know what? I can spend tier 1. Yeah, why not? This is going to do a number on my... Well, tier 2 doesn't make... It's not the end of the world. It's going to do a number on my ability to generate income because of the number of workers that I'm going to be generating, but it will have the benefit... Oh, don't do that. It will have the benefit of... So I'm trying to think about why the... Oh, right. We're losing energy because of the conversion capsules. So hopefully we can convert as fast as possible. So the drawback to this is going to be that my labor costs go up by quite a bit, and given the fact that I'm really only generating about 500 a day in terms of credits, at least according to this, I don't exactly want to see a big increase in those costs. But given that my ability to produce new things is being limited by the size of the staff, apparently, I think probably the conversion route is the way to go, at least for the short term. And then if I have to, I'll just build another building to... I'll build another building to... what am I trying to say? Another work from home setup if we don't wind up earning enough. We'll see though. Okay, so we'll take out all of the minerals and isotopes. So eventually, I mean, one thing that's kind of nice is that all this waste is just taking up this slot here. I may put something in here eventually, but it's not an overriding concern. This was council trade tickets. Let's reduce citizen waste generation first, I think. Getting rid of truck pollution is not a bad idea. I don't know if I'm going to keep this one. Well, this is the fastest way to that node, so I guess that helps. Might as well just unlock all the nodes. Alright, so we're out of power. Let's turn off the factory temporarily. Now, we're losing a lot of employees here, but the hope is that we're going to have just this huge swell of employees, and then we can just turn all of this off. I figure we're either going to run out of citizens or we're going to run out of artifacts first. Temporarily turn on the homes just to see if we can get some people in. Should I wait till you see that number go up? Then I can turn it off. Okay, starting to get a little low on artifacts, but that's fine because we can always get them from other sources. Speaking of. I like the glowy legs. I don't know if that's a choice or if that's just an amusing bug. So I think we run out of artifacts before citizens, to be honest. Nope. Looks like we're actually just finishing off the last of these. Okay, that works for me. So I'm gonna turn this back on. So I'll wait until the last few slots are done, just so that I make sure I don't lose anything. So we have 3 more to do, and then we're just going to turn all of these off. Nope, they gave up. Okay. I was a little premature there. So again, we wait till this is complete because you can see that when the power went off, we actually lost the conversion. Okay, so that's done. So when you're over the cap, the game doesn't really penalize you. It does mean though that if you lose the employee for any reason, you need to rebuild the infrastructure to be able to get them back. But the hope here, so even though right now my finances are a mess, the hope is that all of these extra bodies are going to mean that I can start getting the work that I need done. So notice that sort of the factory's back where it needs to be. It's clean and nice. So actually what I'm going to try to do here, this may be a mistake, but I'm going to put cleanup back down. I think I'll maybe put that just slightly above move resources. Move resources is important in its own way, but right now I want to make sure that we keep the kind of the factory going the way that it's supposed to. Okay. So if I can, I definitely want more citizens. For the time being, though, I need to boost up the energy plant. And then we can start thinking about expansion. Particularly, we need to get more isotopes, which means expanding to this isotope node. I could probably build a mine right away, but I do actually want to get sort of a road network and all of that in place. So I'm just going to hold off and build it out properly. This is also going to reiterate the importance of the energy plant, because if I don't have the energy plant... So actually, here's not a bad example of a decision to make, right? I could level up the defense turret to level 3. That is a bit of a priority for me, but I do actually want to... I want to get my isotopes in order first, because if I don't, then essentially I'm going to have to try and find a way of getting of building like a what do you call it? A command center without isotopes. So this is a nice to have, but it's not a priority right now. Getting the power to be able to power this expansion is a priority. So that's kind of how I try to divide the different tasks. I'm happy to see those trucks running along. I'll probably upgrade that before too long. I'd be interested to know whether or not we're generating or we're burning trash at a faster rate than we're generating it, because right now it looks like we're losing the war, but it may also be that they're cleaning out this, so we're kind of paying the penalty. Okay, this is going to shut us down for a little bit.
How's it going, Founder? We recently finished up a round of team building over here in security. It means I made the staff party together, Founder. That kind of stuff is more important than you think. But not all of them are really suited for partying. Those modded employees, for example. I understand why we manufacture guys like that. They make this city possible. But as people, they leave a lot to be desired. They lose most of their capacity for social relation. They were kind of like furniture. We were sort of partying around them. Founder, I know you need to build more and more of those guys, but I wish there was another way. They can't tell stories about the campaigns they've survived or the ships they've flown. They can't bond with their crewmates. They're just boring. Good at their jobs, yes, but extremely dull. I feel like it's not right for us to make people boring. But that's what you gotta do to succeed on Titan, I suppose.
This was a particularly telling little bit of dialogue, I thought. It's one of the ones where you wouldn't, like, if you have your list of people who you'd think were the good guys when you started playing the game, and then the ones that maybe you have more sympathy for, Alexa's definitely one of the ones where I wound up a bit surprised in terms of the relatability on that bit of dialogue. I always thought Vern was a lot nicer than he actually is. Okay, so because one of the things that's gonna... So there's two things that are going to be holding my city back right now. Number one, if you notice, I am spending more money than I'm making because of the number of employees that I have. That's a choice that I made. It helped me overcome the waste problem, which is good. But I have to pay the other half of that now, which is to bring in some more employees. So that's what I'm doing right now. And then the other thing is that there's going to be an upper bound to my expansion if I don't find a new source of isotopes. And as it happens, there's a mine pretty much right beside me. Now, I still need to generate 1,000 credits for that, so I may just have to get a little funny with my trade tickets to make that happen. But that's going to be, like, I'll deal with that a little bit later. The first problem is going to be getting down a command center. So I need 200 minerals, essentially one tier 3 isotope, and I think probably it makes as much sense to put it here, but I am going to have to think about where the energy pylon goes, because it's kind of hard to reach. I mean, maybe I put it down and upgrade it. That's probably the best bet. It's a little bit wasteful on isotopes, but it's getting me my source of isotopes, so it could be worse. Now, I don't need to make this particularly large, but there is a bunch, like 2 artifact patches. There's definitely some nice stuff in the area, so I'll probably wind up upgrading it. In the meantime, let's... Ooh, I might be able to afford a mine anyway. But for now, I'm going to do the usual trick of putting down some habitat pods and monetization stations. So I'm actually going to change it up a little bit. We're going to go Factory 4. I'm going to turn off the input for the tier 3s. So the main reason for this is I want a bunch of tier 2s to be able to build the new work from home setup. So I'll let those accumulate over time. Okay, you get turned into a tier 2. That's so I can... Actually, you know what? If I make it a tier 3, then it's also going to cover the mine. So that wound up working a little bit better than I was expecting. Okay, what do I have available? Truck pollution, HQ livability, council trade tickets, employee limits. Okay, let's start with the trade tickets. And I'll get some monetization stations down. There's a couple of things that I want to keep an eye on for my isotopes. So number one, I want to make sure, first of all, I want to make sure that I can access this isotope node, that I can build, number one, the mine. Because the mine will be a source of tier 1 isotopes, so even if I have to wind up moving them to something like the factory over here, that's fine. You know. Number two, I want to be able to build a factory which is dedicated to isotope manufacture. Number three, isotope storage. And that's obviously a nice to have compared to the others. We're looking okay for the command center, so I think I'm going to hold back for a bit. I'll survey the ruins first. Just get a bit of an idea in terms of what our network's going to look like for it. Again, there's two things that are taking longer for me to build than I was expecting. One is the... Oh, actually, speaking of, let's get that line. In fact... So the 4 o'clock's the work day, so I'm going to wait for the last possible second, and then I'm going to maximize the return. Okay, so... Take the ruins here. This is going to be a little narrow to work with, but again, so the way I'm thinking about this right now, we've got a mine, then we get a road, well, doing something like this, I guess. Yeah, so let's say the road goes like so. I guess that means I need to move one of the artifact patches out of the way. This is a lot to give up, but I am actually going to make this pylon level 4 nuts. Okay, this can still work. Just the mine's going to be in a slightly different spot than I thought it would be. But I think we can still make it work so that I can get power to the places that need it. Oh, nuts! I got ahead of myself and didn't make the most of the money. That's fine. But it does mean in 50%, I probably want to figure out exactly what the heck I'm doing. Hey, Joshy man. So, in this game, I'm currently generating 1,591 income, and then my expenses for employees are 1,699. Now, there isn't a penalty for failing to... Okay, sorry. There's a small penalty for failing to pay your employees. And basically what happens is, if you fail to pay your employees, then you cannot make any more employees, but your existing employees still work. So essentially, one of the things that can be desirable is if you know that you're not going to be able to make payroll, you actually want to spend as much of that as possible, because that means that you're able to translate it into things that will be profitable for you, as opposed to, you know, just going to your staff and they spend it on whatever. So this game definitely encourages you to be a real jerk of an employer. But obviously, I'm the hotshot entrepreneur. I'm the one with the vision, and so I'm more deserving of the money. Okay, so it turns out I wouldn't have built the mine here anyway. So maybe what I'll do, I'll put the mine here, and then I maybe build out the road like so. And that way I'll be able to put the factory, I'll tuck that inside here. Living in Wisconsin, this type of employer seems normal. I was delighted when someone from Brace Yourself clipped. So it was my first realization of this feature in the game. And I believe that clip is called Accidental Capitalism. I was strongly amused to see that reaction. I mean, one thing that would be is so this is I occasionally kind of go on this hobby horse of like talking about the difference between like ideas that seem fun on paper, but like relative to what it costs to do it wouldn't come in. So like one of the things that would be interesting. So think about like a .com era. Well, I mean, it doesn't even have to be .com era. It could even be today. But like one of the things, if you're like a hotshot, let's say, software guy, right? Like you can code with the best of them. You've just got this unique skill set that makes you, singularly in demand, and essentially you can charge whatever you want for your services. There is the question, like, why would you go to work for a startup versus, versus a Google or an Apple or a Facebook or something like that? And one of the answers to that is equity, right? The fact that, you will pull a very good salary at those other firms. But if you work for a company that winds up just like completely hitting it out of the park, there is just no conceivable way that those other established firms are going to pay you an amount equal to what you would make if you had equity in, like, let's just say a unicorn for the sake of example. If you're not familiar with the idea of a unicorn, these are the sorts of things that achieve $1 billion valuation before going public. So if you think of something like an Uber or something like that, those are the types of those are the kinds of types of firms that you'd think of. So there'd be kind of this neat idea, right, that if you fail to pay your employees, one of the things that you have to give up is equity, right? Because again, people have to be paid one way or another. And that's an interesting, okay, I am talking about my own idea, so maybe I shouldn't be saying, oh, that's an interesting idea. But think about how the value of the net worth, or the balance sheet or whatever you get at the end of the game, or at the end of the scenario. Like, what that's measuring, that's essentially the same thing that's moving up the rebel threat level. So if you think of this idea of like failing to pay employees, like the value of the enterprise is still there. It's just that you're not necessarily retaining it. Like in the end, achieving success is the thing that matters. So it's like, if you introduce this idea of giving up equity, what does that actually change in terms of the gameplay? Well, at the moment, that wouldn't change anything. The other way of thinking about it would be as like, so either then that's a change where it's like, okay, so now we just need to bring something new in because we want this idea of, you know, of giving employees equity, which may or may not be interesting. But then you say, okay, so how does this affect this other system that we have? Because like right now we're looking at the value of the enterprise as the way that the threat level is measured. And again, just because you want to connect it to this, you know, again, I think it's not I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it's an interesting way of approaching this. But I think it is fair to say that this is maybe not the sort of thing that, this is not an idea that's so interesting. This is really cool to see everybody's feet be radioactive. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe it's because of the upgrade that I gave them. Anyways, we've got lots of isotopes now, so I'm going to upgrade this to the top level. And in fact, we're in the middle of a leisure cycle. So normally I would be upgrading the fuel turbine and the energy plant. This would go from 24 to 36. So, but yeah, in any case, it's just one of these things where it's like, it's a neat idea, and it's maybe possibly in line with the theme or something like that. It's a way of sort of introducing a penalty for exploiting the workers too much. But the drawback is that there isn't really a good way of being able to say, okay, here's how it sort of fits in with the existing systems for the game to make it interesting or worthwhile to do. As it is, basically, the way that the game works. And again, this is not to say that the way that it's currently working isn't on brand either. But essentially the way that it is that if you don't have the money, it is actually better if you don't have the money to hit payroll, it is better for you to not pay your workers and to invest in the things that will make your Citicorp more productive than it is to actually meet payroll. Well, I mean, you say that, but there are still like Ubers and there are a lot of companies where you'd sort of think that they don't have a hope, but like in the end, like if you go and work for one of these startups and you wind up bought out by one of the FANG companies, that's still a good payday for you, right? The one that you're more worried about is not necessarily that you that you get bought out. That is actually an event that some people are potentially looking to have happen. But the worst one would be if they say we're not gonna buy you out. Instead, we're just gonna make a competing product, and they actually do a better job of it than you, or they're at least able to reach your intended audience. I think it was Joseph Schumpeter. So this is the guy responsible for the idea of creative destruction. And one of the things, so there's, first of all, there's a paper by Kenneth Arrow, and it is sort of this theory paper which sort of builds a model which says that there would not be a situation under which an incumbent would be the innovator for something, that it's always going to be some outside participant that winds up sort of taking out the or winds up making the thing that will eventually unseat the incumbent. Now that's not necessarily something that in practice we've seen. Obviously there are companies that are able to sort of establish themselves and disrupt an industry, and the incumbent sort of fails as a result. But one thing that is kind of interesting is that Schumpeter, the Mr. Creative Destruction, I think his model was that essentially there would be a number of established firms that would ultimately sort of be the engines of progress, which is obviously kind of different from how you imagine these things working. Do I have any tier 2s yet? No. Actually, I guess I could put the factory down like this. Okay, but crushing and getting bought out are not the same thing, right? Like, if you want to correct me on ignoring the crushing part, it would be important to distinguish between the two. The best company I ever worked for was bought out by Petco on the promise that they'd make no changes for 5 years, did so, and then buried the company, cut it to pieces, and sold it all off to cover their failing budget. So are you saying that they did this within the 5-year period or after the 5-year period? On the 5th year. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I honestly don't know how that sort of stuff winds up working. Like, in the end, the idea that, like, to a certain extent, when I look at that, I'm like, well, they did honor the agreement, right? And circumstances can change. Like, I think the general history on acquisitions is that companies overpay. The most famous one that everybody's talking about is the annoying car guy getting Twitter. But I suppose like, even if you were to take a look at, so probably one that I was recently looking at was
Wonderful day to put down one of the council's pawns, wouldn't you say?
I'm glad we're making money. But clearly we don't have the energy to... Okay, you know what? We're going to turn off the smokestack for a bit. No, that's not enough. Okay, we'll turn that back on, and we will probably turn off the command center. I guess it'll have to be the smokestack and the command center now that I think of it. I'll wait till after. But anyways. But yeah, so like, the one I've been looking at was Take-Two and Zynga. So obviously there are a lot of gaming firms that want to get in on mobile because it is a very profitable segment, and it's one that, I mean, if you want an example of incumbents sort of being caught flat-footed, it would definitely be the mobile space. Ooh, this is gonna be really tough. I can afford to lose this. I don't want to lose this, but I'm gonna hold it out. Hold out a bit. I think I was gonna demolish a few of these. But yeah, the one thing that I haven't been able to figure out about the so anyways, yeah. So one of the drawbacks is that you wind up overpaying for an acquisition, and then at that point, right, you have to deal with the sunk cost. Okay, you're not getting the money back by continuing to operate it. What you ask instead is, moving forward, does this thing fit into your business plans? So I think now, I mean, assets can be sold as well, right? So one of the things that surprises me a little bit on some stories, I used to know someone who worked for Club Penguin, and I mean, they didn't exactly give me the financials, but from my understanding, the question was not so much whether or not Club Penguin was profitable, but whether or not it was generating enough of a return for Disney to be worth to keep running. Again, I never got a firm answer on that, but like, so far as I can tell, the thing was not running at a loss. Sorry, Karma. So with that in mind, right, like, if you're Disney, yeah, you have pretty solid margins. Like, obviously $1 spent by Disney is something that you expect to have a really big return for. But what maybe surprised me a little bit was that there wasn't the effort to necessarily find a buyer for Club Penguin, because presumably somebody who maybe isn't as good at generating some cash from from their current activities, or somebody's looking to expand into mobile, it may be that there's more value in being able to find a buyer for that. But again, like, obviously, Disney didn't exactly go out and say, "Oh, listen to this guy."
Founder, I know you work closely with the council, so you have your opinions on them. I respect that. But honestly, I think they're a bunch of idiots. You're telling me the council collects artifacts from old Titan every day, and they still can't tell us exactly what caused the collapse? I don't know. I mean, I believe it. If they figured it out already, we'd be living in a council dictatorship. They'd have ancient bioweapons pointed at our heads, and they'd be saying, "Get in line, jerks." I mean, that's what I'd do if I had ancient weapons strong enough to kill a whole moon. So yeah, I think they're dumb. It can't be that hard to figure out what killed old Titan. Whatever it is, it's lying out there in the ruins somewhere. And if I had the council's money, you bet I'd find it. I'm sure it was a bioweapon. There's gotta be a sample left somewhere. So, yeah, Founder, be careful with the council. Either they're dumb or they're playing you. And I think they're dumb, which is probably the worst option.
Oh god, I feel like I've heard that one before, but that was a really good little bit of dialogue. Anyways, so this was a unnecessarily long example, but what can be difficult, right, is that after those 5 years, the reality that the company is looking at is potentially different from what they were looking at when they bought it. Like, so anybody who goes out and says, "I'm buying this thing specifically to shut it down," there's a couple of other factors that you want to keep in mind. One would be, like, so the question that I sort of had for my friend is like, well, if this thing was like a going concern, like, obviously you guys have a way of working this out. By the way, the animations during an alarm are wonderful. Obviously you have a way of working together. Like, this is part of the value of the firm, is that you've got sort of a production process which has allowed you to sort of make this type of game and to be really effective at doing that. And so it would seem to me that this is, rather than just sort of destroying that benefit, if someone were to get together and sort of bring the band back together, presumably this would create more value than somebody, a bunch of people just kind of being scattered to the wind and trying to find work somewhere else. Now, easier said than done, right? Like, trying to get financing is a big, like, that's part of the job for some people. But it's just an example, right, where if it's something that wasn't profitable that has been shut down for other reasons, and essentially, so far as I can tell, the Club Penguin reason was just because Disney wanted to be someone who was licensing rather than necessarily generating its own stuff. To me, like, this would potentially be one of the ways that people would see a return. Now, again, there is definitely the practice of like buying up something specifically so you can kill it. But the problem is again, if it's a really good idea, if it's a patent or something like that, sure, buying the patent is an option. Now, I don't know if there's a lot of things that have patents where like you buy the patent and for whatever reason not producing the good is more profitable than just making the thing and selling it. And of course, like, patents expire, right? So at some point you're going to have to deal with the existence of this object. But like, I understand that firms do close, and I do understand that people do buy things and break them up.
Wonderful work, Founder. It's good to see those rebels crushed.
You can hurt us, even destroy us, but you cannot kill our desire for freedom.
The reasoning behind it again is a one that I'm not always always able to parse out without further details. Anyways, I'm sorry. That was like a topic that was covered in multiple parts and probably wasn't done very coherently. But I will follow up on what you wrote above. So, second biggest employer in our cities, so the economy got shocked. Where were we? And it's still recovering 4 years later. You never bought the company if they couldn't afford it. Well, yeah, I mean, this is the problem, right? Like, you don't necessarily you buy something on the best case that you have, but the one thing I'm not trying to do is to try and suggest that these are philosopher kings who are figuring everything out. Like I said, a lot of acquisitions just wind up being very costly for a company and don't deliver on the promise. Generally, people overpay. I'll also confess too, some of the stuff that I was talking, like for the Club Penguin example, for instance, there's also, I tend to think sort of the time and the place to mention some of this stuff. So like, obvious, like I did ask, the person is like, well, do people have a plan to, this probably is not the smartest thing for me to do to shut the energy plant down again, but we are not in a work cycle, so it's actually, there could be worse times. Let's take a second to go in. I said like not to seem like too cold on on the situation you're in, but like if this thing was profitable, like why isn't it that somebody's like trying to, if like they're not going to be able to buy it back, but like why isn't it that someone can just go and essentially transfer it to a new host? And to my understanding, that was essentially what some people were trying to do. For the person I was talking to, that wasn't really feasible for them because they essentially needed to be drawing a paycheck right away. So obviously in that case, they can't sort of wait for the promise to materialize. But this is like, the reason why I bring that up is not, so there's a guy, I'm going to admit, they kind of bullied me into buying their game. And, that it is what it is. Like, I do tend to find that they're one of these people, and I'm sure everybody has them on their social media. Like, most of the stuff that they post actually kind of annoys me. but I try not to just shut stuff off because it's of a different perspective than mine. And I suspect they believe exactly the same way as I do. I feel better about this now because this is a few years ago, but essentially, I think Activision Blizzard had announced a bunch of layoffs, and I had more or less made the point. I more or less made a point that, you know, when you're competing at a high level like that, and one of the things you need to do is retain talent, it can actually be, like, I think they were just kind of giving this incredibly almost Hobbesian view of, like, you know, people will be cut the second that, you know, the company starts, you know, seeing a decrease in its margins or something like that. Again, it's a few years since that exact dialogue, but essentially I said, well, you know, here's the thing, right? Like, number one, people have an understanding of a company's systems, and then number two, right, if you are competing at the top level for talent, right, like if you want to be making, you know, the Division 2 or Battlefield or Call of Duty, right, you know, enormous kind of tent poles for their respective companies, you know, you can't just sort of toss around the workforce, you know, like there is a reason why EA responded to the EA spouses thing. Anyway, so like I tried to give like some kind of an account to say it's like, you know, there is actually a little more nuance here, right? Like it's, I don't think you can just look at profit and loss statement and make a prediction in terms of whether or not there's going to be large amounts of layoffs at this given firm. And I remember really specifically this guy giving a really terse reply, like, nobody thinks this way. And quite literally the next week, Ubisoft posted some disappointing results and said that there was no intention for layoffs because, you know, people are an asset, you know, we're thinking long term, so on and so on. Effectively the thing that I'd said. So the problem is, of course, is that when is somebody in the games industry versus me, you know, when I do an analysis, I do the best that I can with the information that is available, but I always do so with the understanding that you know, there's the book learning, there is the, you know, the best understanding that I have of the situation at the time, but that it can always be mistaken and that things do not necessarily operate according to sort of what you might imagine sort of building something up from first principles. And I do take that seriously, right? Because the last thing that you need is someone, you know, with an opinion. And like, yes, you like, in principle, I would sort of expect that if it's that outrageous and if it's that like completely diluted, that people would be able to explain the flaw in the reasoning. But also, I'm not owed that, right? Like, I'm nobody. But on the other hand, I also think, you know, literally nobody thinks that way is maybe a bit more dismissive than the idea merited. So, one way or another, though, obviously, not someone who is convinced. Oh, yeah, that's fine. Sorry, I'm getting tied up. But again, this is the reason why I bring this up in this context, because, you know, again, we're talking about the closing of that store, or the closing of Club Penguin or something like that. Like, so again, other than the fact that I do want to be compassionate to a bunch of people who just got some really bad news, I know I'd be beside myself if I found out that there were layoffs and I was affected by them. There is the analytical part, and that person did know that I have this analytical interest in these subjects. And so, yeah, again, as it turns out, that was more or less what the company was doing. And again, it's also worth mentioning, like, so if it comes down to like a Starbucks that's closing, so first of all, I think Starbucks usually tries to find, like, they call them partners. So like they try and relocate the people who are affected. But I know in those particular cases, you know, that's a little bit harder to say that, oh, we had such a good store, you know, we'll just, you know, we'll get some financing. Let's go to the bank. You know, I've got a line of credit. You know, let's let's make a new coffee shop and do the exact same thing. And the reason you can't really do that is that it's not to say that being a barista does not require skills. Like, it's a service job. It's something that requires a certain degree of ability on a certain set of things. But it's also fair to say that this is not the sort of thing where that location, which obviously was not performing well enough to be kept open by Starbucks, it's kind of hard to say that specific combination of people working in that one location was doing some sort of above and beyond kind of coffee service, right? So there's not necessarily the same sort of assurance that there's not the same sort of assurance that the new store would perform as Starbucks, especially because so much of Starbucks is the name. But in terms of game development, right, there's so many people who, like, have an idea for a game and never go beyond that. Like, the idea of actually being able to deliver on a game already is above what some people who are looking for financing can deliver on. In that case here, right, like, you've got a much more specialized set of skills that are not necessarily available to just kind of pick up off the street. And again, I mean, especially in terms of, because I think Club Penguin was based in Kelowna. I don't know if there's a lot of other Kelowna-based developers. Oddly enough, I think most of the Kelowna-based developers wind up being ex-Club Penguin developers. So I think Adventure Capitalist and Adventure Communist are two examples of that. But yeah, no, I don't know. In that case here, right? Like, I've long since, left the point of saying anything coherent or interesting here. But that is one of the. I guess for me, it comes down to a puzzle. Obviously, I'm not really granted a close view on how this stuff works. On the inside, but when I hear of something like a Telltale closing or a similar story, like, I do sometimes wonder, especially if you hear about people not finding employment afterwards. I do sometimes wonder about that, because at least in the case, sometimes when you hear these stories about companies sort of falling apart. Some of them, like, especially the ones where you hear the story. I mean, and again, this may even just be, the way that I read maybe the news a little bit more skeptically sometimes. Sometimes when you hear this obvious mistake was made and that's why it all fell apart, one of the questions that you would want to ask immediately afterwards is like, well, if it was this obviously avoidable mistake, it sounds like there's still some money to be made from this, right? Like, essentially the problem wasn't necessarily structural in terms of the workplace. It seemed to be this one particularly bad set of people or this policy that they did, or pick whatever the villain is supposed to be. And if that's the case, what you kind of take away from that is to say, okay, well, maybe the answer is to find an investor who's willing to put up the capital to sort of jumpstart this thing again and see if it works. Now, obviously, in the case of Telltale, that's kind of what happened. And I did actually write an article on that. So there are people who expressed a very heavy degree of skepticism about it, and sort of felt that... I mean, so one of the things that came up was that the people who had worked overtime at the old Telltale needed to be made whole by the new owners. And I mean, there is, obviously in bankruptcy, there is the matter of, like, who is owed what, and, compensation along those lines. But the other thing is like, there is a reason why the people who bought Telltale got Telltale at a discount. It's because the brand is so tarnished, and people are going to react that way to the title. And in the end, like, the idea here is that they feel, the people who bought that feel like they're able to work despite those defects and take what was valuable about the Telltale brand. Whether or not they succeed in that, time will tell, I suppose. But I guess what I'm trying to say is it's complicated. But again, like, the other thing too is it depends on the, like, so, the Ubisoft thing is mostly just because I think the guy's a bit of a jerk and I really don't want to interact with them more than I do, so I would privately take the victory lap on that one. But yeah, the one thing you don't want to hear, like, and this happens a lot, like, I remember during the Telltale closure, there were a bunch of people who had lots of opinions on, like, how Telltale games were actually garbage, and this is, because this game sucked this way, this is why, why it failed, so on and so forth. Like, nobody wants to hear that. More importantly, I think most of the people on the inside know the problems better than the people on the outside. Which, again, is why I'm somewhat cautious in terms of how I approach analysis on this sort of stuff. But on the other hand, I will also say I do think that people are way too ready to sort of claim that people aren't allowed to have an opinion on something because they're not directly involved in it. Like, you probably can't turn around and say, well, what about consultants? And because usually the people who say that sort of stuff also don't like consultants very much. But like, I'd put it to you this way, right? Like, if somebody, we'll think back about the money stuff that I was talking about. So if someone walks into the Bank of Canada, and says, "Oh yeah, like, money's just like a construct, man. We don't need to let it rule our lives," or whatever. Nobody really needs to spend a lot of time thinking about that opinion, right? And you don't ask whether or not the person has a PhD. You take it for what it is and you move on. If a patent clerk comes out with a revolutionary theory on the structure of the physical universe, probably the not so appropriate reaction is, oh, he's just a patent clerk, right? For those of you who don't know who I'm talking about, Albert Einstein was working as a patent clerk during the time that he was, I believe during the time that he created his was it Wonderful Year, Miracle Year, whatever they call it. So yeah, like, obviously you're setting yourself up for tremendous disappointment if you're just looking at someone's profession and saying, oh yeah, well, they could never come up with something useful. Like, if you wind up dismissing people that way, you were probably really never going to listen to what they had to say in the first place. And at that point, like, you're wasting everyone's time, pretending otherwise. Now, this obviously doesn't mean, you don't turn around and then say, so then clearly we need to listen to every crackpot that comes in because maybe they'll say something important. Like, that's obviously not where that's going either. But I do tend to find that people who don't have any other argument or don't have any other point tend to rely on the credential a little bit more. The worst one for me by far has been, there's a lot of people I've had to interact with as part of work. And there is a very strong tendency for these people to sign their emails so-and-so PhD. And that is, like, I despise that convention. We could really do without it, to be completely honest. It's not even jealous. I would have loved to do a PhD, but I just think it's I'm even just trying. I'm trying to think in like most credible circumstances. I'm really trying to think where. Like even the textbooks that I read, I think the PhD may not even be mentioned. I mean, maybe if it's a textbook, it's assumed, but yes, I have a master's. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have gotten hired if I didn't have a master's. Trying to think of the best way to handle the money problem. Because we'll have 1,000 at the end of today. Actually, no, I know the answer. So we wait for... the next period. We're going to lose a bunch of money paying our workers. That's unavoidable. But we're going to get 3,240 or thereabouts. So that's going to bring us up to 4,369. Assuming a number of you just said nice. And what we do is we request credits. I can actually probably do that now. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't think it's... You know, like, I don't necessarily think it's wrong to ask the question, like, who are you to say this to me, sir? But if it's like, oh yeah, they don't actually work in games, so you can ignore everything that they say, it's like, well, you know, like, I don't know, like for most of the stuff that I write, I think it's absolutely fair to have a certain degree of skepticism about what I've written, right? I do not have the experience that other people can draw from. On the other hand, that can... you know, in certain circumstances also mean that there is a perspective that is worth hearing being presented here, right? If you have someone who understands a particular set of ideas that you don't normally get to hear from, that can mean either you are given a new perspective that can be useful, or it's going to be that someone is, you know, redoing the basic mistakes that, everybody kind of figures out on their first time doing something. And if someone were to say that I was making that nature of mistake, absolutely fair. I'd actually kind of like to hear those particular cases because that would make me better, right? But I would also put it to you this way. If I had worked in games for some of the writing that I'm doing, obviously the good writing that I'm doing, the bad writing, you know, I don't feel that people need to necessarily engage with that. But, you know, if I'd spent the time in games, then I wouldn't have the perspective that comes from doing other types of studies. And, you know, I would argue that in the case of games. So, you know, obviously this is the wrong audience to rant at, but this is just one of these cases where, you know, you're a captive audience, so I can really let her rip. You know, here are some examples of problems that I think have been well understood by other fields that are currently relevant to the environment in terms of gaming. Market structure, right? What I mean by that is people feeling like they need to do a race to the bottom in terms of... so this is an article that I've been trying to write several times over, and I can never quite deliver it in a way that I'm happy with. But the idea of the difference between a perfectly competitive market as opposed to a monopolistic competition. Now, as it happens, monopolistic competition in the long run tends to behave a lot like a competitive market. But the reason why you might care about this and why you may want to think about things other than just sort of the same as the market for vegetables, let's say, is that if you sort of feel like people go into a store, put money on the table and say, 1 video games, please, then effectively you're just competing on price. But that's not what people are competing on. RimWorld has just, after years of being out, only just gotten its first 20% discount. And in fact, it's getting that first 20% discount after a price increase for the base game. So the practical difference of that discount from the 10% one was maybe $2 Canadian. Now, I mean, a bunch of people are going to wind up buying it thinking it's a good deal, because to a bunch of people on Steam, you know, all they care about is the number. Like, it's about the perception of the good deal as opposed to the actual good deal. But that's another topic there. But the question is like, so why is RimWorld able to do that when another game, which was called the Castle Doctrine, why is RimWorld able to do that when the Castle Doctrine isn't? And I mean, to a certain extent, it's because RimWorld is like a unique experience that people want to have, right? If you want to have the RimWorld experience, there is exactly one person you can get that from, and that's Ludon Studios, Tynan Sylvester's company. Now, it does not mean that RimWorld can now charge $1,000, or Ludon can charge $1,000 for RimWorld. Because there are substitutes, right? There are things that are close enough to the RimWorld experience that at a certain point you're going to say, okay, this is a bit rich for my blood, I'm going to go and try this other thing instead. But the thing is that, you know, essentially every game developer is granted a monopoly on their game, and that's from copyright.
Hey, Founder. Remember that class I was planning to run? Employee Ethics? I think it was successful. I do. I'm still waiting on the participant feedback forms to come in, but I think I taught them a lot. There was some stuff that surprised me. Some people got into much bigger arguments than I anticipated. But it is important to fight this stuff out. People integrate new learning better if they're forced to defend it against outside attack. It's a pretty neat brain hack. Get them to fight it out, and the winner feels a lot more sure about what they know. And of course, I provide them with enough of the right answers to control what the winning argument will be. This time, though, there was a lot more argument than I anticipated. Your Admiral, she's intense, I must admit. Whew. And I was surprised by the corporation monitor we have working with us. Hess, he is a tough one. Anyway, I'm feeling a bit tired. In the future, I should probably hire someone to do this kind of training. We'll talk later, Founder.
I did know the bit with Alexa was coming up, so I like that little detail quite a bit. Because, of course, we've heard that after Alexa has let us know what her thoughts on the process of conversion is, or what those thoughts are. Okay, I'm going to request some credits first, and we'll see if we can get more workers before too long. Okay, so anyways, if you feel like you're basically participating in something like the market for vegetables, then effectively what you have to do is you have to compete on price. You need to find a way of making your game, you know, on a quality-adjusted basis. You need to figure out how to do that for a lower cost than your competitors. And I mean, let's be honest, that is a really, really tough. That's a tough feat to do, right? Because if you want to consider the market for indie games, one of your competitors is Supergiant, and I would never want to be releasing a game, you know, in competition with them. They're really, really good at what they do. But this is the thing, like, it's not like the market for vegetables. If you have, and I mean, this is supposed to be what the promise of indie games is, right? These really unique and these really personal stories, which are told, you know, using the advances in terms of the various tools for game development. So I'm thinking of tools like Unity and Godot and essentially low-cost alternatives to how it used to be done. Then, you know, in principle, what you are doing is you are creating this this unique experience that you can't get anywhere else, and either the amount that you need to charge or the number of units that you need to sell at that price is much less than what you would, you know, traditionally expect. Now, understanding the difference between the two is kind of important, but I'm also going to guess that that's probably not the first thing that somebody's going to be thinking about when they want to be thinking about how to sell their game, or what price to sell it at, or any of the other different things going on. In fact, I think a lot of people probably get into game development with an idea of what the game is going to be and how awesome it's going to be, and it's completely right that they think of that stuff. But it is fair to say that there are a lot of people underpricing their games, or potentially even starting projects which don't have a realistic chance of making their money back. I would probably suggest that if if the type of game that you're making is the sort of thing where you feel like there needs to be competition specifically on price, that you don't have sort of enough of a unique story. I suppose in this case this would be the sort of thing that I guess Ryan Clark would probably say this is where the hook comes in. Obviously, I don't mean to speak for him, but I would guess that this is the sort of thing that's coming up. If you don't have that point of differentiation, then the only way you're going to be able to differentiate yourself is on price, and that's probably one reason why a lot of games are not finding it easy to to cover their costs, basically. But whether now, obviously, if I sit down, I'm going to sound like a madman if I try and explain it like that to someone. But obviously, being able to talk to someone who understands that and is able to sort of describe a market that way and identify whether or not you're in such a marketplace, I think it would be fair to say that, one, this would be helpful for at least some people, and number two, such a person is probably not going to have a background in game development. Another example that I could give in terms of just sort of understanding these sorts of topics, productivity. Productivity, when you think about it, is one of these things that, when you go into business for yourself, chances are you're doing it to avoid this concept, right? It conjures up these images. And again, this is another article that I've been wanting to write, and I've just had a little trouble putting it in simple enough terms where I think people will find the insight helpful. The idea of some middle manager looking over your shoulder, to make sure you're not taking too many coffee breaks or something like that is usually what somebody's thinking of when they think of productivity. It's an unpleasant thought, and generally people want to avoid that sort of thinking. Like I said, it's the reason why some people will potentially want to go into business for themselves. But it is also fair to say that productivity is potentially another reason why a lot of otherwise promising independent projects are not necessarily meeting their goals, or necessarily are able to, to sustainably produce things. And part of this is just a question of looking at Twitter. So, the best example I could get, so the best way I could maybe put or articulate productivity would be the ability to do more with the same or less, is basically the best sort of shorthand that I can give for this. Leaving aside the question of, how many coffee breaks someone takes, if, let's say, I work out, so, I do articles and I keep a spreadsheet in terms of how many words a day that I write over a certain period of time. I have an estimate in terms of words per minute. My words per minute in terms of just typing is very fast. My words per minute when I'm doing original writing is considerably slower, because of course I need to actually have the ideas, and that's part of the difficulty. So if I found a way of being able to keep my research tab open, while simultaneously, simultaneously getting the writing done. So in this case, I can afford to get rid of I actually should have emptied out these employee modules a while ago. That's 3 workers I could have had doing something productive. I'm going to keep requesting credits just because we want to get to that 5,000 number before the end of the day. I'm not going to destroy the relays quite yet. What does this give me? 9? You know what? I'm not fully shutting everything down, but I am getting ready for the time we don't need this anymore. So there will be a mineral version of this when I can build it. Okay, yeah. But if so imagining I find a way of kind of keeping my research tab open, my, my writing tab open, I'm able to get the facts that I need while writing without having to take extended breaks. Or maybe I just find a better formatting. Like one thing I really like doing with Word is going to draft mode, so I'm not fiddling around with, the different formatting, which is just the worst kind of wankery while writing. There's lots of little things that you can do to sort of improve the speed, right? One of the... Sorry, I should see how much I've got. We've got a lot for isotopes, so let's boost up the fuel turbine. This may shut us down for a little while, but we're in a sleep cycle, so we should be okay. I guess it depends how long it takes. I think we're hooped. I should have shut this off a lot sooner. It doesn't even matter if I turn it on or off, to be honest. But yeah, so essentially, like, a productivity improvement would be something like, switching to the draft tab, because I notice for whatever reason it makes me a little bit zippier in terms of getting the the essay written, let's say. Now, one of the reasons why I point this out is that there's the romantic notion of the solo independent developer. And there is... So let's assume for a moment that the solo independent developer is actually so good at all parts of game development, they will actually do above standard work, even outside their specialty. Like, they have a specialty that they're awesome at. I'll just say programming, because I have a little bit of knowledge of programming, not the sort of thing that you'd want to like rush out and hire me on, but for the sake of the argument, let's just say programming. Actually, this... Yeah, this will probably work. But let's say that they also want some type of 3D character inside of it. Okay, fair enough. But to do that, they're going to have to take away time from programming. And of course, because they are such a hot shot at programming, that means they're going from high productivity work to relatively low productivity work. Now, for somebody who is awesome at everything, that may not be a big problem. They may actually be able to deliver something to meet sort of players' expectations. The only thing that they will have to give up, of course, is if they're doing everything sequentially, then there's going to be, a certain amount of time that it takes, and it's probably going to be longer than, than if you had a team of people working on this, because, sorry, I definitely need more trucks. Because again, you're doing each individual step as you go by. We're also in the workday, so I want to make sure I'm not losing too much in terms of cash. Now, of course, the fact of the matter is that I don't think there are few people, if anybody, can actually do everything to sort of a professional standard. And so one of the things that's potentially happening if you're doing this sort of solo dev dream, and there are people who've successfully done this, again, I'm not denying the existence of solo devs, but one of the problems may be that what you are doing is moving into low productivity work for yourself, and what's happening is that the time you're taking is making it so that the amount that you need to basically break even is going up, but ultimately the quality of the product is going down. And essentially what you are doing to yourself is kind of keeping on an underperforming employee without having a conversation about their performance. Because the thing is, inevitably when you think about underperforming employee, you're like, oh, layoffs. It's like, no, that's not the only option here, right? But it is fair to say that if you've got somebody who's not performing and you don't address that with them, you can't realistically expect any other kind of improvements. And presumably you've hired people because you think that they can do the work. But I mean, again, if you don't sort of sit down and think about productivity, if you don't think about what is again, this isn't really the point that I'm trying to make in the essay, but so again, there's lots of reasons to see why thinking about productivity is unpleasant for people. I finally can buy my shipyard, and we want to build that reasonably soon. So under normal circumstances, I would have liked to put it down, I guess, somewhere here. If I put it here, I don't have a roadway to the mine. And this is going to be where I put my residential areas. So by process of elimination, I guess I put it here. I guess I don't have the claims. I suppose I could also put it here. This isn't that far from the mine. But yeah, I mean, essentially, so the thing that really made me think about this was there was someone... So I've talked about this particular developer a couple of times, and again, I won't say the specific individual. But there had been so Jeff Vogel... some of you may know his game. So this is Spiderweb Soft. He basically wrote an article on there being too many games. And I don't even necessarily agree with everything presented in that article, but I think the underlying sentiment was probably a decent one. Which is that there's a very large waste of human effort, and it may even just be because they don't have, they don't have other alternatives. But this particular developer wrote a kind of nasty reply, because everybody was piling on this guy, unfairly in my opinion, but that's another matter. Okay, so workday's almost done. We buy as many trucks as we can. But one of the really big things that he pointed out was that, essentially it was this idea that he'd actually be doing quite well if only the Steam algorithm was more fair. And of course, by more fair, he's inevitably meaning that his particular game is recommended more. I forgot to make this isotopes only. Now, one of the things, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why this is an off-putting point of view, but what was really interesting, so I happen to know a bit about this developer. I'd actually covered one of their games on the channel before. And what interested me was so they've got a follow-up game. Essentially, their first game was unexpectedly successful. And I think I actually have some specific ideas as to why it was successful, but I'm not really. Nobody particularly cares for my opinions on on that. There are other things that I can provide value on, but why X game was successful is not one of those things that people are banging down my door to find out about. But I think kind of the idea here, I think they kind of like quit their day job or whatever and sort of went into full-time development. The second game was released and it did not perform as well as the original one. This is, a pretty common story. An unfortunately common story, but, it's not unique by any stretch of the imagination. And, again, a lot that's said about the Steam algorithm and how that's such a bad thing, and if only we could fix it, if only there was it was more fair, then the world would be all right, and his indie game would have been presumably much more popular than it was. Now I've actually had the experience and again, like I just don't have the heart to say this to this guy. Like, I have actually seen their game recommended to me multiple times through the Steam algorithm. The Steam algorithm has identified me as someone who might be interested in their particular game. And unfortunately, the reality is that there is a little bit of an indication in terms of my person. So I was actually also given an offer to cover the game via email, and there's actually a specific reason why I didn't take that up. And it sort of regarded the way that they had sort of taken the broadcast for granted in the past. I don't so just to be clear, that does not mean I'm wishing failure on this particular person, but I actually specifically chose not to broadcast the follow-up game. Number one, because it really wasn't that I'll make exceptions to anything pretty much if it seems like good content, because I don't think any of you should have to suffer, because I'm holding a grudge. But even then, it doesn't really count as a grudge. But, on the margin, when I wasn't this is the sort of thing I could imagine that if this is a developer that was sort of trying to get their name out there, I'd be willing to do it, for one or two broadcasts just to let people be aware of it. People who are interested can pick it up on their own, so on and so forth, right? In this case, I was like, you know what? I'm not really that crazy with how it got treated, the first time around. It was, I mean, I can actually kind of give you an idea of specifically what's going on. One thing that I noticed was that this was one of the rare cases where I'd actually specifically asked a question of a developer, and was kind of hoping for a response, and I'd covered the game earlier. And so this is sort of a follow-up, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is something that'd be kind of interesting to know. I'll ask them the question. And I noticed that they basically ghosted me, which is like, okay, fair enough. Nobody owes me a reply. But what I did notice was that they really enjoyed wrapping themselves up in the I'm a developer flag. And particularly if there was someone with, attractive young lady on the profile picture, they were happy to give replies to that. And I'm sort of like, okay, you know what? Fair enough. That's your thing. Have your fun. But I'm a little annoyed by that. If it's just sort of like, oh yeah, I don't really reach out to people. Fair enough. It's like, you're not hot enough for me to interact with. I'm like, okay, you know what? I don't need to keep streaming this stuff. So I don't. All right, I'm gonna need to claim it. So, anyways, that's the rather than dancing around the issue. This is the one little bit of detail in terms of things that may be unrelated to the game. Okay, Braxton Dawes saved me from going into further detail.
Ah, Founder, for once you have caught me at an opportune time. You see, I was just examining some artifacts you brought me and marveling at their scorch marks. We have run several tests now, and it seems something very hot would be needed to reproduce these burns. I have a few theories, but it is far too early to say for certain. Only a fool makes predictions without all the evidence. But if you were to push me, I would hazard a guess that it may be our very own micro sun. Perhaps there was a time when it burned much hotter than it does today. And if that is the case, then it opens up an interesting new question of how some of the burnt artifacts were found outside of the orbital pathway. Could it be that the microsun was moved some millennia ago? That would be rather sexy, wouldn't it? But alas, I think it is much more likely these artifacts were moved during storms, or even by human hands. Perhaps by one of those pesky ruin runners. Still, I will keep investigating and let you know if I turn over any proverbial stones.
I think this command center and energy pylon are going to get hammered. But yeah, so anyways, this is basically the reason why I sort of didn't follow through on covering that particular game. I also don't have the cash to bury the city, although if it comes down to it, I might be able to request it from the council. Okay, could be worse. It really depends on where these things stop. Because if this thing starts going after my mine... In fact... Yeah, so I can live with them attacking the turret. Okay, there we go. So this is going to be hair-raising for a bit. Let's request the credits and get this thing repairing right away. I don't think we're going to be able to survive this much damage. Not without repairs, at least. And we don't have the minerals for a Gossok. I think we are done for. Problem is, I don't really have a good way of distracting from the, like, I can pull in the rebels, but I can't get rid of them. So I basically need to wait until I have two... Yikes! Okay. This is gonna sting. Okay, this is definitely something that I need to bury the city over. $1.6k credits, okay. They are gonna shut us down. There's no way we're gonna survive this much. So wait, I don't understand. Not enough resources to rebuild the building. Oh, it's the minerals, almost certainly. So I gotta think of a way that I can get tier 3 minerals as soon as possible. Let's do... Okay, if they're going on the headquarters, this is GG until we can... So we're not going to have the power to... Yeah, I think we're done for. In fact, I think if I wanted to be cheesy and reload, I probably should just let the campaign finish off, but I'm curious if there's a way that I can... Well, maybe. Okay, I'm gonna feel a little bit bad about going back to this autosave, but let's see if we can save this through proper factory management. And I'm sorry, I had a more substantial point that I was meaning to make other than just sort of like airing dirty laundry. But yeah, so the problem, like, so again, like I wanted to at least kind of get the disclosure in terms of the one case where this guy sort of like bugged me a bit. But like the fact of the matter is that like on the margin, I wasn't that interested in the game. Under normal circumstances, I would give the support, but because I didn't necessarily feel that it was a case where it was a... I didn't really feel that it was the best sort of use of that goodwill, I guess, for lack of a better term. I declined to pick it up. But the big thing for me was this underlying argument about the fairness of the Steam algorithm didn't quite hold together for the simple reason that I have firsthand knowledge of this thing being presented to me on multiple occasions, and there actually being a set of circumstances under which I would consider playing the game. What I do know though, because I do still check in occasionally on Twitter. Like again, you know, it's I do need to stress this is not some like long-standing grudge or something like that, and I think it's helpful to kind of keep an eye on people who have met with success, and to see where things are going. What I did notice was they were talking a bit about certain features, like basic features in Unity, that would stop them from sort of hand placing certain objects. And you know, it's totally fair because I think their credit that they were given from someone who gave them an endorsement was more about their writing ability than necessarily about their design or their ability to sort of create something in Unity, let's say. But needless to say, right, it's kind of interesting to seeing this number move up so much. It makes me really wonder if there's a way that I can make a miracle happen. So we're at 98. So let's say we'll do a magical Goshawk. This is going to be a disaster to try and work. I'm actually going to save this here. It's definitely not going to be able to take on one of those ships on their own, but it can run interference, which is the one job I need them to do here. But yeah, so they were kind of talking about how, you know, oh, I never knew that I could, you know, do this one thing here, and it's a bit of a time saver. And this actually taught me, this is also one of the benefits of, you know, listening to people that you don't always necessarily agree with. this revealed quite a bit to me, right? Because obviously this is a project that struggled. The developer has said as much. But it's also clear that they have kind of quit their day job to go into development, but without necessarily knowing all the tools. I figure at this point, if we're going to be tipping it over the edge, you know, we're already at 99% anyway. I guess I could have gone on like a buying spree in the tech web, but I'm pretty sure I've already covered everything in here anyway.
Did you really think you would be rid of me that easy?
Okay, so we're losing power. We can shut this off, I think. Still losing power. We'll kill the mine for a bit. So again, the name of the game here is just to try and delay. There's some buildings that I can't protect, but I need to get something in the air and fighting. But yeah, so this is a case of someone who sort of left the day job to pursue a game development career, which is a completely admirable step. But it also kind of communicates that this is creating a product. There's only so many hours in a day. And in this case, this person's sort of still learning on Twitter how to do what seem to be fairly basic commands that are specifically designed to make you more productive inside of Unity. And to a certain extent, that's fine, right? That's we all need to learn somewhere. But it does mean that when I start hearing sort of claims about whether or not the current Steam system is unjust. It does invite a few questions in terms of well, is this the only story that's going on, right? Is there maybe another explanation in terms of why we're seeing the outcomes that we are? And in the end, just taking a little bit of time to think about productivity, thinking about what you're good at doing, how long it takes you to do certain things, and whether or not you can deliver something that will get you sort of a fair compensation for the effort that you've put in is, I think, a really important decision. I mean, in the end, what it's talking about is what are you good at doing? And are you able to, do you need to hire someone to cover the things that maybe you're not specialized in? Or do you pursue a different project that's more in line with the sorts of things that you can get done? And again, productivity is one way of framing that, but it's nice because it's a nice sort of generic way of being able to cover a lot of different activities. Anyways, the point wasn't well made, and I could have made it a lot sooner, so sorry. I'll just shut up and play the game now. Okay, so I'm not sure if I want to do 2 mediums or 1 large. 1 large is definitely hard to fit in, but... something's getting entombed no matter what, so let's start here. I'll put a large fuel fabricator because why the heck not at this point? It is cramped. I really want life support, but... Or not life support, a medical pod, but I have no idea if I can fit one in. Not without closing off other parts of the ship that I need access to, so... say the people who are going on that ship will be very brave. But yeah, I mean, essentially, one of the things that one of the reasons why I spent time on that example, and again, I need to sort of refine the overall argument, but one of the reasons why I think that is a useful illustration is that, to me, it indicates that that project did not have to be a disappointment to the creators. But one of the factors that likely, one of the things that probably was a factor in terms of it being a disappointment was that there was a lot of time spent pursuing things that maybe they were not the best equipped for. And what they could have done, possibly what they did for their original game, was they could have done things that were a little bit more in line with their a little bit more in line with the type of work that they're known for, or the type of work that they do best. The project would have been done either faster, or it would have been more appealing to its potential audience. And then as a result, they would have been in a better position to pursue maybe a more ambitious project. They would have essentially they would have been able to build in some of the training period that they needed, in addition to being able to to pursue. But again, this is really the case where it does become sort of backseat development, and I don't really have any standing in terms of the conversation. I don't know what their circumstances were, but I mean, all that I can say is when I take a look at the Twitter record, it does seem that there was a basic feature which was related to how the game was being made. And this is potentially something that translated into a significant cost for them, which didn't necessarily have to be a cost. So weirdly enough, we may actually survive this just because the rebels took a longer time to show up. Which again makes me feel a little bit bad that I did the scummy reset. Obviously we're under a lot of pressure now, and we definitely need more money from the council. So at this point I need to redirect the penance. Because that's going to demolish us if we let it do its thing. Although I am annoyed that there isn't an employee already on this. We're so close. At least getting rid of the fire. The problem is if we can't get the pressure off the defense turret, we might be a little too late, but we're holding on by our fingernails. Okay, why does it say there's people not assigned? You're kidding me. Ah! Okay, this is definitely one I'm going back on the autosave for. They can't move out of their crew pods. Okay, like the first one was definitely... Actually, you know what? I don't need to justify myself to you. So again, the problem here is this is the heavier firepower. The best way I can get influence is from migrants. So if I donate the minerals, I don't have the ticket to get the credits back. So in this case, we just need to hold fast. This is bad. That's got to be a priority too. Wish I could see somebody with a fire hose. Okay, so we need the Valiant Polydeuces. Honestly, all they need to do is draw fire right now so we can get this thing repaired. Perfect. So I don't know what kind of hope we have for our guys here. Wow, that's 3 large Gatling guns. Now, it doesn't have any batteries, so we do have one option of trying to just go straight for the... I don't think this is going to work. We'll try this for a start. Okay, looks like we got somebody working on the repairs, which is good. Okay, now the big question here is... Oh no, they've got generators, so this thing's still covered. Wow. So I mean, at least this is taking this one out, but it's not really helping us. Yeah, we basically just need a bigger ship to be able to properly take out the... The other thing we could maybe try is taking out crew. I'm not 100% sure how I feel about that strategy, but let's give it a shot. Again, the main point right now is to buy us a little more time with the turret. So this turret's doing damage, and it's getting repaired, and that's the biggest purpose for the Valiant Polydeuces right now. So yeah, both guns are offline. Now, one of the trickier questions that I have is at what point do I put this back in the shipyard? Because obviously I can't use the credits to repair both the ship and the defense turret. So I think in this case we just stare them down and hope for the best. Okay, Oh, Erlang.
Hey, Founder. Looks like the newest tech has hit the fleet. We got monetization stations now. My dad checked him out. He's retired, looking for a little extra cash. And all I have to say is, yikes. Those ads are extremely unsafe for people with brain mods. Some of them are straight up hack attempts, and the rest are social engineering. I told my dad he needs to stay away from that stuff. He's got cranial implants, so he's more vulnerable to hacks. I said, hey, I'll pay you to stay home. Just keep yourself safe. I'm worried a lot of fleeters are gonna check those stations out. Life is so boring up here. But boring is better than broke, my friend. And it's way better than dead.
Somebody please repair.
You're a lot smarter than most founders. I can respect that. If you can respect that I will be back for blood next time.
Holy
I don't like
crap.
the sound of that, Founder. Let's make sure we're prepared for their next attack.
All right. Yeah, I feel a little bit bad that I did reset the I did reset the previous run on that, but that was actually really neat to sort of see how that's really neat to see how that all turned out in the end. I think I gotta wrap it up though. I apologize because I suspect the rants weren't doing that much for people. I honestly just don't know what the state of the channel is right now, to be honest. I don't know if the rants were worth it, and I have no idea what's going on with the tech. Like I've been trying every day to get this stuff fixed, and it does kind of feel like the only thing it really succeeds in doing is attracting more comments on how it's not working, which isn't the greatest place to be in. So maybe I was hoping to do this for a bit longer, but maybe this is the time to just wrap it up until I can get stuff working again. But at the very least, I don't know, I'll try and at least keep going until Industries of Titan is out. But I can't make any promises as far as the quality goes, because I don't know. It's all I've really been hearing lately. Okay. Let's leave it at that. Let's see if there's anyone online. Okay, I don't have anybody playing Industries of Titan. Sadly, no Phantom Brigade. What about Crypto the Necrodancer? You all should be playing more Brace Yourself games, I feel like. Okay, well, I do see that Shand is playing Once Upon a Jester, so we will do our usual Wednesday night host of him, I think. And again, I'm sorry for being gloomy about the state of the stream, but I'm kind of working with what I've got here. So thank you, everybody, for watching Industries of Titan. I do like this game very much, and it was neat to run into a problem like that. I'm curious how I'll handle that in the future. I think probably just building the shipyard earlier, but easier said than done. But W. Shand is playing, or Will Shand is playing Once Upon a Jester, which it seems his chat was actually really bugging him to do yesterday as well. But he is a pretty unique independent streamer. He does a lot of sort of off the beaten track. There's a lot of off the beaten track sort of independent, usually horror games. So he's usually a safe pair of hands to leave you with at the end of the night. What is Friday? Because I know I took Monday off for the holiday, although I did do the Christmas stream. So let's just see. Okay, Friday doesn't seem to be a holiday, so I will be back then. My inclination has usually been against the storm, but I feel like I need... I don't know. I feel like I need a change of pace. We'll figure it out, though. Again, thank you for watching. Enjoy Wilshan stream. We'll see you later. Bye.